Monday night, the Krueg show, John Lund in the house. We're going to talk a lot of Niners. We're going to talk some Debo, some Purdy, some Super Bowl 59. It's all coming up next right here. It's the Krueg show brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. All right, welcome to the Krueg show. Fire up the band. Brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corners, Sports Cards, and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, along the Monterey Peninsula. My friend Anthony Catania is our buddy down there. He's at 831-521-5264. Sharp Corners, Sports Cards, and Collectibles. And, of course, we're also brought to you by Better. This live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueg Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. We've done it a bunch this year. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. Everyone who does is automatically entered into a chance to win the Ricky Pearsall jersey, but of course we gave that away last night. So we will have our next giveaway coming up here. But yes, Better, a proud sponsor of the Krueg Show, and thanks to all the good people at Better for supporting the Krueg Show. All right, we're off and running Monday night. Happy February the 10th, coming on after the Warriors beat the Bucks. We'll talk a little bit about that before we get out of here as well. But we titled the stream, The Truth About Brock Purdy and the 49ers After Jalen Hurts' Super Bowl Victory. And, John, why don't we start there? The Eagles destroyed the Chiefs 40-22 in New Orleans. It was all Eagles from start to finish, 24-0 at halftime, 34-6 at the end of the third quarter. 40-22, and it wasn't that close. The Eagles scored 16 points in garbage time to make it seem closer than it was. But nice little 18-point win for the Eagles, an easy win, an easy cover. Wasn't the best Super Bowl because it was a blowout, but what did you think? Jalen Hurts gets his ring.
Man, it's something that you and I have been talking about forever. I mean, I think they showed the rest of the NFL, and we didn't need the Super Bowl to prove this. Is it on the offensive and defensive lines? Howie Roseman in that group, and they're young, invested. And I did a whole breakdown of how the Eagles were built, and but in the last 4 years, they've had 8 what I would call hits in the trenches. That's what they do. Jalen Carter and Williams on the outside, and Jordan Davis, those 3 guys on the inside. And you look at the offensive line guys like Landon Dickerson and even Jordan Mailata, who was a 7th-round pick, and you go back to Lane Johnson in 2013, he was a 1st-round pick. It's the Eagles dominated, and we wonder why. They dominated because they decided about 5 years ago. They drafted Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round in 2020, but in the last 5 drafts, they have absolutely dominated. And if there's a theme for the Eagles, it's offensive and defensive lines. That's what they did. Cam Jurgens replaces Jason Kelce. Was there anybody talking about Kelce? They missed Jason Kelce at all because Cam Jurgens was taken in the 2nd round and was a great center. Landon Dickerson at guard, they pick him up. They did a great job in picking up Becton from the Jets, but all those guys on that line, 4 of the 5, are drafted guys, and a couple of guys in the last 4 years. Defensive line, Jalen Carter just smacking people around. Nolan Smith's running a 4.39 coming off the edge. They just took guys from Georgia. And then they decided, God, we're not really good in the secondary. That's our Achilles heel. What do? Quinyon Mitchell with the 1st-round pick is a Pro Bowler. We all saw what Cooper DeJean did yesterday, and he was in the 2nd round. It's just hit. And they dominated. There was just nothing the Chiefs could do. Patrick Mahomes had no time. And here's the biggest stat of the game, and I know you know it. Blitz rate, 0.0. Blutarski. That means they're getting to the quarterback with 4. They're dropping 7, and Patrick Mahomes is going, huh? He looked as clueless as he's ever looked. In fact, Krueg, he looked as clueless as he did in Super Bowl 54 against the 49ers until Jet Wasp. They had him just as confused. It's just that the Eagles cashed in. DeJean gets the pick 6. Bond gets the interception inside the 10 right before the half. They get 14 of their 24 in the first half off of turnovers, and they just put so much pressure with the 4. They didn't blitz. They didn't blitz one friggin' time in that game. and they got there with 4, which gives you such an advantage defensively. So if you want a blueprint for the 49ers, trenches, 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 and trenches again in free agency and in the draft this year. That's how the Eagles won. That's how the Lions are beating teams. It's how the Rams are beating teams. You look at the teams in the NFC who are doing the best. They stole this blueprint from the 49ers, and then for some reason the 49ers went away from it, because we know in 2019 when they were really successful, it was Buckner and Armstead and Bosa and Ford. And when Patrick Mahomes lost the Super Bowl, the only other time was against the Buccaneers, and it was their front four that dominated that Super Bowl. So it's really hard for a quarterback to throw from his back, and he doesn't look very good that way. And the 49ers need to get back to dedicating their picks and their resources to the trenches.
No doubt. No doubt. A couple takeaways that I had from the game. One, and these are all Niner-related takeaways from Super Bowl 59. You got to run the ball. You got to commit to the run. When was the last? How many times? We've been watching Kyle Shanahan. He took over the Niners in 2017, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We've watched 8 seasons of Kyle Shanahan. What number of times do you think in those 8 seasons the 49ers have run 67% of the time in a game? 67%. We know they did it.
Time.
We did it they did it in the Super Bowl against the Packers and Vikings, or they did it in the playoffs, I should say, in 19 against the Packers and the Vikings, where they didn't trust Jimmy and they ran Raheem Mostert left, Raheem Mostert right. Those are the only times I can remember the 49ers running, close to 70% of the time.
Well, that's what the Eagles have become. The Eagles have become what the Niners used to be, and now the Niners have to get back to what the Eagles are. And like you said, what they decided when they got Saquon Barkley, and the reason they got Saquon Barkley is because Jalen Hurts had a great game in the Super Bowl, there's no doubt, but he's an inconsistent player. But what they really did that was brilliant was in the 2 weeks they had to get ready, and that's Kellen Moore, who's now going to be the New Orleans Saints head coach. They replaced both their coordinators, by the way, coming into the year, and I know Vic Fangio gets a ton of that credit, Krueg. But what they did was, and I think what was really, really brilliant was, okay, all their resources defensively, stop Barkley. So what'd they do? They pulled the ball and had Hurts go. So here goes Barkley up the middle, and Hurts just goes to the right of it, right off tackle. And he's got wide open spaces. They did so many smart things offensively, knowing what Kansas City was going to do. But it all, back to what you just said, it all goes back to the run game. And they dedicated themselves. They ran the ball more than any other team in the league. Did Philadelphia, and they dedicated themselves to it. So you got those guys on the outside. You got to respect those guys, and you got the kind of talent that if the 49ers are healthy, they can match it with the 2 receivers and with Dallas Goedert. But again, let's go back to the offensive line. The defensive line blew the Chiefs away. The offensive line blew the Chiefs' defense away. Chris Jones, who has racked 2 Super Bowls for the 49ers, he was a 0 factor in that game. Then he got hurt. Where's that guy in our Super Bowls? I'll tell you where. There was no one who could block it. He's dominating because the interior, which you and I talk about all the time, I love Dominic Pooney, but Brendel's on his ass all the time. Banks is going to be leaving. He was a poor fit. He couldn't move in the zone system well enough. They get this monstrous guard out of Notre Dame, and I know he's a local guy out of the Bay, and I like the kid, but he can't move enough for that system. So they couldn't move guys, and they couldn't run that system with him. And here's Philadelphia knocking Chris Jones out of the damn game. And we're sitting there scratching our head going, well, why can't we do that? Because you haven't dedicated the resources to it, man. Look up front. Jurgens in the middle, and Becton, the average of their line, Krueg, is 6'6", 338. And they can move, and and they're athletic.
Oh, I know. This game was there's no question that if you're going to win, look at the teams that run the ball. It's like, and why is that? Why are we seeing? Because what's happening is it's become more of a passing game, right? So you're seeing more 2-shell defenses. You're seeing a lot of 2 high safeties, and it's really hard to throw against 2 high safeties. So teams are running the ball, and if you look at the teams that ran the ball effectively this year, they almost all made the playoffs. And if you look at the teams that run it the best, they were all standing at the end. And the Niners need to run the ball better. They need to run the ball better on the goal line. They need to run the ball better in short yardage. And how are they going to do that? Well, They've got a Pro Bowl fullback, but they're not getting much out of him. They gotta upgrade him. They've got a
No
Pro
doubt.
Bowl alternate center from a couple years ago, and Jake Brendel. They got to upgrade him. You got to upgrade from Aaron Banks at left guard. You got to find another back who can run with power and has strong legs and can run in between the tackles. You got to figure out a way to run the ball better in short yardage. You can't be one of 5 teams in pro football that uses a fullback and then have your fullback make the Pro Bowl, and yet you still can't run for a yard on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. That's the 49ers right now. They really can't run the ball in the low red zone. They don't even try. Shanahan doesn't even try anymore because he knows he doesn't have the guys to get it done. So that's the number one takeaway is, man, if you want to win, you got to run. Now, look at the Eagles in this game. Saquon Barkley got totally shut down. He had 2.3 yards per carry on 25 carries. He had the longest run he had all night was 10 yards. So he didn't run it worth a damn. Gainwell ran for 1.7 a carry. He didn't run it worth a damn. The Eagles only looked like they had a decent run game because Hurts ran for 72 yards at 6.5 yards a carry. So outside of Hurts, they didn't really have a strong run game in this game, but they've been a strong running team all year. And you have to be able to run the ball, and the 49ers can't. And that to me, they could improve all kinds of things about their football team, but if they get them into next year and they still are passing the ball inside the 5 because they can't move anybody in the run game, they have no chance to win the Super Bowl. So that was takeaway number 1. Mm-hmm. Takeaway number 2, the defensive line has to be able to heat up the opposing quarterback without blitzing. You just said it. They heated up Mahomes. They sacked him 6 times. They didn't blitz. They sent their front 4. You have to get it done with your front 4. Why? It's not because, 4 is some magic number. It's because when you send a 5th rusher, you're giving the quarterback on the other side a defined look, a defined read. He knows where to go. And these guys are so good at it that it's like if you're going to blitz off the right side, guess what? They're going to throw it right where you vacated. Or run it right where you vacated. They're going to go right in the spot that you just vacated. So your defensive line has got to be able to rush with their front 4, and every single guy on your front, you saw it with Milton Williams, for example. Every guy on your defensive line, this is a passing league. Every guy on your defensive line has to be a pass rusher. You can't have Jonathan Hankins. You can't have Javon Kinlaw. You can't have a non-rushing defensive lineman. It's like having playing modern NBA, but you have 2 non-shooters on the floor. You can't have
Absolutely.
2 non-shooters on the floor. You can only have 1 non-shooter. And in today's pass-happy NFL, you can't have a non-pass rusher on your defensive line, or they'll just drop in off of him and help on everybody else and isolate that guy, and you just can't get it done. Then it's like basically 3 against 5, and you're going to lose 3 against 5.
So let me ask you this, because there's
you got to have pass rushers.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. And that was the whole thing that we learned. Not that we didn't know it, but just Philly has done such a great job on both sides. Like I said, in the last 4 years, they've had 8 hits in the trenches on both the offensive and defensive line. They're not going away. They're really young, so you got to get back to doing what they're doing. But here's, this is the charge for the Niners in this offseason, and you and I just talked about it. All these mock drafts are coming out with them drafting interior linemen. I got news for you. I think that in Drew Dahlman, and there's a couple other guys you and I had mentioned on my show, a couple of guards around the league. I think that in free agency, despite the fact that they've got to get Brock done, they carried over the $50 million, which was the most in the league. They can get Brock done. That number's not going to be huge this year. It's going to be in a couple of years. I know we all screamed and yelled about 30 million AAV on Brandon Ayuk. His cap number next year is 11.2. One of the reasons Debo has to go is a $15.8 million cap number. He's the tops on the team, and he's the 4th wide receiver. So the number for Brock next year is not going to be huge. The number for Ayuk is not going to be huge next year. They carried over $50 million. George Kittle's deal jumps from $12 million against the cap to 22. If you start looking at contracts, you can start to gauge how long a contract it really is. George Kittle was never supposed to see that $22 million cap number. They're going to restructure his deal. They're going to get the deal done for Brock. Dre Greenlaw is going to be an interesting one. Hufunga's going to leave. Obviously, Ward's going to leave. So how much money does that actually leave? I think they can still do everything that I just mentioned and get the guys they want. Plus, get a deal for a Dolman, get a deal for a guard, and you got Pooney on the other side. You're just going to have to deal with McKivitz. I'm sorry. And then you go heavy into the defensive line. And I think what's going to happen later this month, Krug, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum already, but it's still fun. It's a deep interior defensive line group, unless, and I would do this, and I heard you talking about this last night, I would do Myles Garrett for 11 yesterday and have him and Bosa across from each other. And now you can go with 4. You can do what Philly did last night. You can bring the 4 and you can figure out the D line. But if they aren't that aggressive, or he doesn't want to come here because he was on the car wash again on ESPN this morning. I don't know what it is with Myles Garrett, but he's going on every show possible to say, I'm leaving Cleveland, like he's on some kind of a job, interview tour. But if they don't go Myles Garrett, then like you and I love the same guy, Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, who I think can stop the run and the pass, whatever it is. But you got to heat it up with those 4. I think that the best thing Floyd can be is a third down guy, and whoever that other end is got to be able to move inside for like a turbo package. But man, you got to emulate what they did. I think you can get a center and a guard in free agency. They can get everything done that you need to get done in the offseason. I know it sounds like a lot, but the Niners and Parag Marathi have done this thing right in terms of being able to figure this out. Those cap numbers aren't huge. You and I have talked about it a million times, but Ayuk's number's not huge. The number yet for Purdy is not huge. They're going to restructure and redo Kittle's contract, which is actually going to bring that number down. They have plenty of money to make these moves in this offseason. They are not dead. Remember a year ago when everybody was counting Philly out, and all of a sudden they signed Saquon Barkley, Zach Bond, draft 2 studs in the first and second round in their secondary, bring in Vic Fangio, bring in Kellen Moore, Super Bowl trophy. The Niners can do the same thing. They've already brought in the defensive coordinator. Kyle's going to get a right-hand man on the offensive side. They brought in Gus Bradley. They're doing all the smart things. Now they've got to execute the offseason, which is signing their guys, getting their numbers down, and then going out in the draft and nailing the draft, because that's really what Philly has done over the last 4 or 5 years to put themselves in a position. They needed DBs. They drafted 2 Pro Bowl stud young DBs. They just went boom, boom, back to back. Okay, our secondary's fixed. What else we got? I mean, it's amazing what they've done.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, and then they got into this game with Mahomes. They didn't blitz. They got it done with their front 4. They thoroughly confused him. Kansas City was ripe for the plucking. I mean, there's no question. They were struggling to stop the run. They were struggling to run the ball.
12 one-score games. I mean,
how about this?
They got lucky.
Here's the most amazing stat that I think I've heard. Did you see? Well, first of all, Philly this year was 13-1 turnover ratio in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They took it away 13 times. They gave it away once. They were plus 12 in the playoffs. That's freaking amazing. Okay, that's one. But the other one that was really amazing, did you see what the point differentials were on the Eagles and the Chiefs?
No. Oh, it had to be close, right? With the 12 comebacks, right?
Well, you would think that both teams were great. You'd think they would have similar point differentials. Kansas City was 15-2. Their point differential on the year was plus 59. Okay, wow. That's 11th in the NFL.
Yeah.
They had a worse. The Kansas City Chiefs had a worse point differential than Denver. They had a worse point differential than Tampa. Philly, on the other hand, was 14-3. Their point differential was not plus 59 like Kansas City. It was plus 160. And they were second in the NFL. I think only the Lions might have been better.
Yeah.
But plus 160. They had 100 points difference. They were 100 points better in point differential than Kansas City. 100 points. 101 to be exact.
Yeah,
that's an amazing number. I mean, I realize it's the way you play the day you play, and winning close games. There's some value in that. But over the long haul of an NFL season, point differential in a sport where everybody plays a different schedule. Some teams play a first place schedule. Some teams play a fourth place schedule. Some teams play teams that are good early and are beneficial because of the schedule when they play a team. But when you look at it on the entirety of the whole season, and you've got a team that's 101 points better than the other team, odds are that team that's 101 points better is better.
Yeah.
And I wish I had consulted this before I decided to bet on Mahomes on Super Bowl Sunday.
It's hard to
because I bet on Mahomes, I
them,
wind up losing, and it pisses me off because after the NFC Championship game, I'm like, oh, Philly is better than Kansas City, and they're beating Kansas City. And then I said to myself at the time, I'm like, you know what? By the time the game rolls around, I'm going to convince myself to bet on Mahomes, and sure enough, I did. It wasn't a sizable amount of money, but either way, if a team, just like from now on, always consult the point differential. If you ever see on Super Bowl Sunday one team that has over 100 points advantage on point differential, bet them. Bet them, because odds are, they're either going to be big favorites or they're just way better. 101 points over the course of an NFL season is a lot of points.
I would say, and that's a great point. Billy Bean is smiling somewhere listening to this because he loved run differential as a determining factor in baseball.
Yeah,
but I'll make a bet right now on better, which is, I know it's not out yet, but the 49ers have such an easy schedule next year with one playoff team at home, and that being the Rams, a team that the Niners generally play well against. They're going to be plus 100 points. I mean, they're just, if they get general health from the football gods, they've got such an easy schedule next year that they should roll teams. They, just like a few years ago when they were able to sit guys in the fourth quarter and, all those kind of things. With general decent health, the 49ers, I think, are going to win the division. I think they have a great opportunity, but it doesn't mean anything once they get to the playoffs. They could be like a Tampa Bay once they get to the playoffs, because I think they're going to have a good record based on who they're playing. But back to your point, I think if they fix the trenches next year, they're going to get their guys back. I know we're going to get into Debo a little bit. That cap number isn't as wild as everybody thinks, because it's going to be whether it's a cut or a trade, it's going to be post June 1. And there's a robust market. And you and I were actually talking about this before the show started. If Brandon Ayuk was a free agent this year, the 49ers would get like a first and a third, because there is no Marvin Harrison Jr. and there is, and there is no Malik Neighbors, and there is no Brian Thomas. There's those kind of receivers. It's just not that kind of year for a receiver. Now, 10 of them will still come out in the receiver market and still be pretty good this year, but not at the high level receiver that they had last year in the draft with those three guys. They just don't exist. Roma Dunze also with the Bears, who I think is going to be really good. That kind of receiver draft is not happening this year. So Debo, with all the teams that need a receiver, and I wrote a piece about this with, New England still didn't get a receiver. Pittsburgh still didn't get a receiver. The Commanders are short opposite McLaurin. There's a lot of teams with ones, but they don't have twos. The Raiders, there's a lot of teams. And Debo, while he has absolutely slipped, there's no question he doesn't have the power and explosiveness that he had on a consistent basis, and he's never been a precise route runner. As a number 2 receiver for a team that maybe needs to change culture a little bit, because I think Debo's going to get in amazing shape, and he's going to play really hard for whatever team it is that he's going to go to. And I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. So he's going to go back to being that culture changer that he was, and that guy on the field that could set a tone. I'm not saying the Niners should keep him, because I don't think financially they could. I don't think it makes any sense. But there's a number of teams that I think could use him and will overlook. Because remember when Debo, and before the Miami game, was saying, it's not me, I'm not getting used, and then, drops the ball against the Rams. He didn't have a great year. But there are going to be desperate teams who need a number 2 receiver, and there are a lot of them this offseason, and not a great draft, that are going to make Debo. I think they're going to get that 3rd round pick. Devontae Adams went from the Raiders to the Jets for a 3rd, and I didn't think that maybe he could do that. But now I'm looking at supply and demand with Debo, and I think they're going to get a 3rd round pick, and I think they'll be able to send him to the AFC so they don't have to see him.
We'll hit on Debo in just a sec. I one other observation is
sure.
From the Super Bowl. I just from watching Hurts, if you have, obviously Mahomes is the better of the 2 quarterbacks. We all know that, and he's still the better of the 2 quarterbacks this morning, despite the fact that he lost.
People have to go back and look at the tape. By the way, he had no time. Travis Kelce, there was a screen to the right, and Kelce allayed. Was it Nolan Smith? He absolutely smashed Mahomes. And I'm thinking to myself, people really think that this is all in Mahomes? Look, he played poorly. He played terribly. He played like he played most of the game in Super Bowl 54 against the Niners, to be absolutely truthful with you. But he played horribly. The offensive line was atrocious. Joe Thuney is a great guard. He's a terrible left tackle, and he was playing left tackle.
They've missed Nick Allegretti.
Yeah,
they missed him. He left to Washington. They tried to throw in Caliendo. He wasn't nearly as good.
And I don't know what's going on with Kelce, and I don't know if he's going to retire. I don't know if he's just, he's enamored with his pop star girlfriend, whatever the case may be. But I mean, that play where he olayed the edge rusher and Mahomes didn't even have time to turn and throw him his screen. George Kittle in a million years has never played that lethargically in a play. I mean, it was one of the worst attempts at a block, even on a screen where you're supposed to let the guy go, but you got to hit him a little bit.
Oh, I mean, Kelsey showed up. Kelsey showed up in the game in some outfit. I mean, when you're really worried about your outfit, you're probably almost done playing football. But I just think that watching Hurts, I think it's just kind of shows the Niners that you don't need to have a superstar quarterback to win a Super Bowl. But you have to be able to take care of the football, and you got to have a good surrounding cast.
Good call.
The Eagles didn't turn the ball over. As I said, they were 13-1 turnover differential in their advantage in these playoffs. And then is Hurts spectacular? No. But Hurts has got a great line. He's got a great back. He's got a great defense. He's got enough weapons, and he's smart, and he takes care of the football, and he can make some plays, and he made a few plays, and they wound up winning the game. What I wanted to ask you before we get to Debo is that one of the things that's kind of caught my eye today was that the odds, my friend Jimmy Shapiro always sends me the odds, and Jimmy sent me the odds today on Aaron Rodgers' next team. And they came out on January the 6th.
Retirement.
And the Steelers were 3-1 favorites then, and the Niners were the 4-1 second choice then, and New Orleans was the the favorite was the Raiders then at 2-1 on January 6th. The Steelers were 3-1, Niners were 4-1. So now here we are, fast forward to February 9th, yesterday. Steelers are even money, 1-1. Niners are 3-1. And the Saints are 5-1. Why would the 49ers be the second choice?
Because these guys don't know anything.
For Aaron Rodgers.
Could you imagine, Krug? You know this. You're around this team a lot. Could you imagine Kyle Shanahan and Aaron Rodgers working together? There's no, I don't want to curse.
I can't even imagine Aaron Rodgers.
No freaking.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers is even going to play next year. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to retire.
Their depth chart at quarterback right now is Tyrod Taylor and Jordan Travis, the kid out of Florida State. What essentially the Jets, who are a complete dumpster fire, just told Aaron Rodgers, we would rather have nothing than you. We don't have anything at quarterback, but we would rather have nothing than you. And they're not in a position to draft one of the top quarterbacks, and I don't think those quarterbacks are good enough to be drafted that highly. Sam Darnold's not going back to New York to play for the Jets. He's probably going to the Raiders or something like that. Daniel Jones, who I think is a reclamation project, isn't going back to New York where he lost all of his confidence. Where exactly are the Jets going to turn for a quarterback? But they'd rather have nothing than Aaron Rodgers. So first of all, I don't know how often those odds are accurate, Krug, because we see that all the time, and it is a fun, fodder for the show. But Aaron Rodgers I have a better chance, and you have a better chance of being the quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. There's no way that Kyle Shanahan would ever bring him in just because he's here. Well, because people are like, oh, he's from Northern California. He'd come here. Kyle Shanahan, the ego back and forth, there's no way Kyle would have a guy like that. So first of all, no chance. And he loves Brock. He'd like to lick Brock head to toe. So there's no chance. Now, if you're a desperate team, if you're the Raiders and you're desperate, if you're Pittsburgh and you're desperate because Fields and Wilson both suck, if you're one, because Pittsburgh right now is going, we have a pretty good team. Maybe they would bring in Rodgers, but the way he acted that act, I worked in Pittsburgh. That act would not work in Pittsburgh. The Aaron Rodgers act would not work in Pittsburgh. I don't know. I mean, he's going to have to sit back because Krug, they invested in, they got him Devontae Adams. They had Garrett Wilson, who doesn't want to be there anymore. They invested heavily with veterans and a first-round pick along the offensive line. Whatever Aaron Rodgers wanted, the Jets tried to get. And I know that Robert Saleh will never, never, never talk about Aaron Rodgers and how horrible he was, but he had a good defense there. They invested in the offensive line. They invested in receivers. They got him Devontae Adams, and he still sucked. He sucks.
I'm going to give you where I think, and this is a guess, but this is what I heard today. The New York Giants added a guy named Chad Hall to their staff today as an assistant quarterback coach. He's going to reunite with Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. They worked alongside each other during their stints in Buffalo. He's a former NFL wide receiver. He coached the position with the Bills and Jags. He's also the brother-in-law of Matthew Stafford, and he's going to New York to be the quarterback coach. What do you think of the Rams, who are seemingly in rebuild mode, but also already have their Super Bowl, flipping Stafford to the New York Giants so he can be coached by his brother-in-law, and then getting some valuable picks back for Stafford, and then just turning around and signing Aaron Rodgers to play one more year or two more
I'd love
years,
that.
whatever, in
If
LA.
if I was
the
a
Rams.
Niners fan, I'd love that because I think Rodgers is just completely done. We all think that because LeBron's 40 plus doing it and Brady did it for all those years, those dudes, as much as people may not like LeBron, those dudes have dedicated their life to nutrition and lifestyle and workouts and living a perfect and eating perfectly. Aaron Rodgers is doing, no offense, because I like the same kind of things that Aaron Rodgers does, but he likes to party and do ayahuasca and hang out, and he looks like Ken Stabler at the end of his career. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is not in good shape. He cannot move in the pocket. He has arm strength. That's all. He has some pretty decent arm strength still. He's got the arm, and he's got the thought of where the ball should go, and he's a complete ass. And so he's a total negative in your locker room. If I was a team, now, if I was really close, like if because you mentioned the Rams, I'd love it if Aaron Rodgers went to the Rams. The other part of that equation is if I'm Matthew Stafford, and the only reason Matthew Stafford's playing anymore is to win. I get the family tie to go to New York, but for Matthew Stafford, I don't know why he'd play. I mean, they don't have a good offensive line. You're 36, 30, he's going into his age 37 season next year, Stafford. They couldn't keep him upright in New York. I mean, believe me, if they, from a Niners standpoint, back to your premise, if it was Stafford out and Rodgers in, put the Niners win the division. Aaron Rodgers is done. The only thing Aaron Rodgers has is a name. He cannot move. He's injury prone. He's not in good shape. You can see that. He's not nearly the athlete he used to be when he could move in the pocket with Green Bay. And he's got a decent arm left. I'd rather have Matthew Stafford all day, every day.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I mean, absolutely.
Like if I'm Pittsburgh, if I'm a team on the verge right now and the Rams want to trade Stafford, I'm lining up. Like, I don't think the Raiders are in that place.
Look at Shane and Dayball. I mean, those guys are absolutely crap canned if they don't turn it around. So they might be willing to give good picks. I mean, if I'm the Rams, if I could get good picks for Stafford, who I've already won a Super Bowl with, and turn around and get
I'd want if I were the
Rodgers?
Rams then? I'd want Darnold. I mean, he's a Southern California guy. If
Maybe
I'm
go
the
for
Rams,
Darnold.
if I'm the Rams, then I'm going to let Stafford go. I'm going to get picks from the Giants, even though, again, I don't know why Stafford would want to go to the Giants, but if I'm going to get something for Stafford, I'm not taking Aaron Rodgers.
I'm hearing
There's
Darnold
just
to the
way.
Raiders to join
Yeah, I've heard that same
Chip
thing.
Kelly and Pete Carroll.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
that makes a ton of sense. They've got to upgrade their O-line, and they need another receiver, and they need a running back. But, I mean, if the Raiders got Darnold, we'll really see what Darnold is, because Darnold had a lot of great offensive weapons and a pretty good offensive line in front of him in Minnesota.
Let's talk Debo now. He did request the trade, and the Niners have given him their blessing for him and his agent to go seek out a trade, almost daring him to go find a trade partner. He was wearing an Eagles jersey during Super Bowl week, showed that he had a boiler. Then he did a FaceTime celebration with A.J. Brown. Maybe he wants to be an Eagle. And then he was pictured, he put on his private story a picture of himself in a Broncos uniform, saying how tough that looked. And so maybe he wants to go to Denver. That's kind of an interesting one. And then PFF, in their first mock draft post Super Bowl 59, had the Niners trading Debo in the 11th pick to Jacksonville to move up for the 5th pick to take Mason Graham from Michigan. You know, that's kind of interesting. The odds are out. Jimmy Shapiro sent me odds today on Debo, and Washington's a 3-1 favorite to land him. Chargers are second at 4-1. Carolina's third at 5-1. Denver's fourth at 6-1. New England's fifth at 7-1. Pittsburgh's sixth at 8-1. Vegas Raiders are 10-1. Rams are 12, and Dallas is 16-1. So, you know, the Debo thing is really interesting. I don't, you know, on one hand, I think he's done. I did a video about a month ago about all the different run-through-you players in NFL history, and they all are done by 28, 29. Only John Riggins was like the only guy who ran through people that really lasted until his mid-30s. Everybody else is pretty much done at 27, 28, 29, 30. By 30, almost all those guys are all done. Everybody who runs through people, and that's what Debo does. He runs through people. So on one hand, I think he's done. On the and the numbers this year show he's done. He averaged 3 yards a carry as a runner. He had the same number of receiving touchdowns as Juszczyk. I mean, he's basically just a non-factor. So he looked done, and history tells you he's done. But you know what? He's such a one of one in that there's not a lot of guys like him. He's very unique. So if you do happen to be in love with what he brings to the table, I could see a team overspending to get him because, as I said, he's a one of one. There's not anybody really like him. So I personally think that he's not worth more than a 5th or 6th round pick. But I think there's a chance that somebody overpays, just thinking, the Niners' offensive line is horse S and our offensive line's way better. And if we get him out of San Francisco, he'll be better here. Maybe people that saw him in like the Miami game and think, oh, you know what? He looked good in that game. Maybe there's somebody out there that's like, hey, you know what? He's a gadget player, but man, we really love this gadget player. We've been dreaming of this player, and there's really nobody who's come down the pike who's very much like Debo. I mean, there's a couple guys, but they're not really like Debo. So maybe somebody will give you a better pick than you think, but maybe I'm thinking the best chance of getting value for Debo is if you group Debo with some pick for a player or trade Debo for another player, something where you really couldn't really discern exactly what the value was. Because I think if it's just Debo for a pick, I don't think anybody's going to give you a day 2 pick. I think it's a day 3 pick exclusively, and maybe a late day 3 pick. Might be a 6th round pick.
Yeah, well,
especially with that contract.
Yeah, well, I think what you said is right because there's not it's a supply and demand league, and although it's not like quarterback, lots of receivers come into the league, and that's why I didn't love the Ayuk deal because you get 8 or 10 receivers coming in every single year, and a lot of teams aren't going to give anything up. But if you look at this year, teams who need a number 2 for one reason or another, I wrote a piece on this, but the Bills need a receiver. The Patriots do. The Ravens do. The Bengals, if T. Higgins leaves, they're going to need somebody. The Steelers still do. The Texans do because they hate Stephon Diggs, and he's leaving, and Tank Dell ripped everything he could possibly rip, so now they have Nico Collins, and that's it. The Chiefs we just saw do. The Raiders, as you said, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Falcons, the Seahawks. That, by the way, I was talking to some friends in Seattle. Tyler Lockett's probably played his last snap there, and they're talking about trading DK Metcalf because they think that the market is going to be so good in this offseason that they can get a lot for DK, and they have Smith and Jigba. So I think there's a lot of teams. I think it comes down to the Texans because they need it. They want to win now, and D'Amico's there. You got to connect the dots of who you know. Commanders because Adam Peters was the VP of player personnel when Debo was drafted. They need someone opposite McLaurin. The Steelers still have not gotten anybody. They had so much dialogue with the Steelers until Kyle ran up the stairs, and he should have traded Ayuk, but they didn't. Just stick Debo in those conversations. They've got a lot that they've talked about. Harbaugh would love a tough guy like Debo, and they could figure out things for him, and they just have Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnston's been terrible. And the Patriots are so desperate for receivers for Drake May that, like you and I were saying before the show, I really think that they could actually offer something Debo wouldn't even be thinking about, which is an extension. I think that he'd go, I'm not going to New England, just Ayuk, like Ayuk did, but they've got a ton. They have the most money in the league and a desperate need. They could overpay for Debo, and they could give Debo an extension because I'm not sure anybody's going to want Debo at the cap number he's making at 15.1. That's top 10 this year. That's not AAV. That's different average annual value, which is at 23.8. He's at over $15 million for what he does. And I think what a team's going to do is they're going to trade for him. And I think you're right. It's going to be a conditional 4 or 5 with performance can be a 3. I think that's the max they can get. And then they're going to sit back, and it's going to be a post June 1, not to get all geeky in numbers. If they were to do a pre June 1 cutter trade, it's 15 million that they're going to take a hit on. If they do post June 1, which is what they're already doing with Hargrave, then they're going to be down about $5 million, and they'll get a pick back, and that'll be worth it. So look, it was funny to me when he said that, because he's like, well, I want to get traded. And the Niners are thinking to themselves, we want to trade you or cut you, whatever. You're leaving either way. Like, I don't know if his representative said, it'll look sexier if you say you want to be, if you want the trade and you initiate it versus you getting cut. Because, we all have that. What's that like? For some reason, you're more desirable when you have a job. You're more desirable when you have a girlfriend or a wife. You walk down the street as a single guy, you smell desperate to women. So the fact that Debo is asking for the trade, that's actually a ploy by his agents to say you want to trade, because they're going to cut or release you. And that there's just a perception with that, and you lose value. So I think that the Niners will be able to do that. And just because of the names we just mentioned and you mentioned, it's actually a good year, better than it was last year with all those good receivers coming in the draft. It's just not that kind of a draft this year. So I think that the 49ers will actually get a little bit better value than they would have, say, a year ago had they tried to move Debo.
It's going to be interesting. The odds on Debo's next home, Washington's 3-1. So the favored choice is that he's going to join.
Would you care to move into the NFC? I mean,
No,
let's say the Commanders, because
don't care.
You could see the Commanders in the playoffs next year. They're going to be there for a while. The Niners with the bad schedule and bringing in Saleh and getting general health, the Niners are going to be a playoff team next year. You could see the Commanders. Does that matter to you?
No. I'm going to get the best deal I can get, and that's it. But, they're favored, so maybe he goes and plays with Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury. The Chargers are the second choice at 4-1. They desperately need a receiver. Panthers
are there.
5-1. He's from South Carolina, so North Carolina, would make a lot of sense. Broncos at 6-1. Pats at 7-1. They round out the top five. Then there's the Steelers at 8-1. They wanted him last year. Raiders at 10-1. Rams at 12. Cowboys at 16.
I think Steelers, Texans, and Commanders. I think that with Adam Peters there, I think with the Texans and D'Amico, and they are absolutely desperate. And Pittsburgh never got a receiver. And George Pickens is their number one receiver, and he's a complete head case. And I don't know who their quarterback's going to be, but that's a good team. Like defensively, TJ Watt sitting there going, could you get me any offense? Any offense? Because they have a good offensive line. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, but George Pickens isn't going to get it done. He's way too inconsistent. Freiermuth is a decent tight end, but they don't have anything from a receiver standpoint, and they had so much dialogue with the 49ers last year for Ayuk. Why not just pick it up and stick Debo's name in there instead of Ayuk? So this as well as anybody. What you've got to do is you got to connect dots in that either teams that you have someone there that knows them, like Peters or D'Amico, or you've had a lot of dialogue with in the past. In Pittsburgh, they said, they talked to Pittsburgh until they were blue in the face and almost got a deal done with Pittsburgh until the last minute when Kyle sprinted up the stairs. So why not make the first call to Pittsburgh? Because talk about desperate, and New England, same thing. New England's a desperate team that you talk to about Ayuk. I think they'll resume talks with those desperate wide receiver teams, because in New England, in Pittsburgh's case for sure, they never solved those issues.
And the other question is, one, I don't care where I move them. Just, I would just move them. But it's a matter of who's going to be at wide receiver for the Niners, because the bottom line is, Tim Kawakami had an interesting nugget today. He said, I'm kind of hearing, I don't know how you kind of hear anything, but he said, I'm kind of hearing that this really is a go for broke season. There's a lot on the line. They're paying a lot to the coaching staff. Okay, so let's say they're paying a little bit. They're paying top flight dollars to Saleh, and then maybe Saleh said, go get Gus Bradley, so now they're paying him pretty good money. So, maybe they are paying a little bit more to their coaching staff. I don't know why that's a big deal, because there is no cap on that. But so the ownership is offering a little bit more money, or paying a little bit more money to the coaching staff. But this idea, I guess this would be my first question. Should the Niners be in a go for broke season? Now, I know that that's what he's saying. He's hearing that they're really in a go for broke season, but they've been talking about running it back for years. I'm looking at the ESPN Power Rankings, the first ones out after the draft. The 49ers are listed 13th in the Power Rankings. Kansas City, Buffalo, Detroit, 1, 2, 3. Then you've got Philly, Baltimore, Washington, Green Bay, Chargers, Bengals, Vikings, Texans, Rams, then the Niners at 13. So, the Niners just brought in a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, a new special teams coordinator. They're trying to sign their quarterback. They need huge injections of talent on both the O-line and D-line. And they've got a bunch of other needs besides that. Should they I know the fans, I know this is year 9 coming up of the regime, so maybe in Jed's mind, he's getting impatient with Lynch and Shanahan. And I know the fans are to some degree, but shouldn't your timeline be based in reality and not just on some outside pressure? Are the 49ers, I mean, people talk about Myles Garrett, T. Higgins, big name guys. Are the 49ers in position to make that kind of a move? Because I don't think they are. I really don't. I see a defensive line that stinks. You have Bosa and not much else. At linebacker, you have Fred and not much else. You got a good young secondary, but you still got some holes back there. You're horrible on special teams. You're down 2 or 3 offensive linemen that you need on your offensive line. You probably need another running back. You probably need at least 2 tight ends. You're not very good at tight end. And now you're going to go forward next year with no Debo. Ayuk's not going to play until maybe Thanksgiving. And you really think you're going to roll Ricky Pearsall, JJ, and Cowing out there, and you're going to be some world beater? I think they're delusional if they think that they're one player away. And I know it's sexy to say, oh, Myles Garrett. And I know lots of Niner fans would love to be, we'd all celebrate Myles Garrett, and the casual fan would be all over it. But guess what? The casual fan loved Javon Hargrave. The casual fan said, oh, yeah, Javon Hargrave. How is any offensive line going to block a defensive line that has Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave? Except Javon Hargrave sucked. And the 49ers didn't get a single sack in like the last 6 weeks of the regular season. I'm just saying, it's like, I get it. I understand why people want Myles Garrett, and I understand why they would want a great receiver or a great individual player. But not everybody is positioned at all times to go after one guy in a sport like football. Like the Eagles, it's like, well, the Eagles did this and this and this, and they got right. Yeah, but the Eagles had Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Josh Sweat and 3 or 4 young defensive linemen that were kind of coming into their own. The Niners don't have that. The Niners have like stopgap guys and then Bosa. I guess my point is I love Myles Garrett, and obviously he's great. But are the Niners really? I mean, they went all in on one guy for Trey, and that didn't go well. Then on the tail end of that, they went all in for Hargrave and depleted a lot of their depth. I don't think that went all that great. And now they're going to go all in for Myles Garrett. And what if he gets hurt? The whole season's just cooked. I don't know, man. I know it's sexier to say Myles Garrett than it is to say Aeneas Peebles from Vatech and Savion Jones from LSU and JJ Pegues from Ole Miss and Tonka Hemingway from South Carolina. I realize a lot more people know Myles Garrett than know those guys. But I don't know, man. I don't think the 49ers are one player away. And it scares the hell out of me when I see Kawakami saying that the people around the Niners that he talks to say that the Niners are in a go-for-broke position this season.
That's not breaking news. By the way, that's not breaking news. They 100% are. That's not it. They're in a Super Bowl window. I mean, that's what they believe. I know that for a 100% fact. That's not speculation. He's not breaking any news.
No, I know, but I mean, is that accurate? Is that an accurate assessment of where
it's
they're
what
at?
they believe. I mean, to me, it's what they believe, and it's not a democracy because if you look at what they're going to do, they're going to re-sign Brock. The way I see it is, offensively, they're going to score points. They need to be better, like you and I have said, at center and guard. But there's a way to do that, and they can do that. They're gonna extend, and they're gonna sign Kittle. They're gonna hope that they don't have the crazy season that they had in the injuries. And as far as receiver, they're not going after T. Higgins, man. They're not doing that. They're gonna undo a mistake that they made with Ayuk last year and giving him all that money. They're not gonna turn around and make another one. They're not gonna put that kind of money at the position. Pearsall was drafted in the first round. He has to come through, or they're sunk, like you said. Jawan Jennings, they signed to an extension. They like him a lot. He's a favorite of Kyle. We think Debo's a favorite. My God, him blocking guys into the bench, he loves him. And then Ayuk is going to come back late. You're right. They might need a stopgap type. Like Amari Cooper's a free agent. He sucked in Buffalo. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a 1-year rental here until Ayuk comes back. but offensively they're going to score. To me, the whole reason they bring in Salah, and it doesn't mean that because, as you said accurately, because like Vic Fangio goes to the Eagles and everything's because Salah's coming, they're going to automatically be great. Well, they're either going to get Myles Garrett, who, by the way, I think is much more of a safe bet. The first round in the NFL draft is 50-50 to a second-year contract. That doesn't mean Pro Bowl or All-Star or anything. It's 50-50 to even a second contract. Myles Garrett is 100% good. So to me, that's a less of a risk, and he's 30 years old. He's got plenty of time left on the clock. It's whether Fred Warner, and then I think that they should go, like I said, the Sherwood kid with the Jets I like better than Dre. It's whether the secondary is going to be any good because they're going to score points. They're going to have the last place schedule. They're going to win 10, 11, 12 games. And I'm not saying that they could be Philly from a year from now because you just accurately nailed it. It's the young players and it's the players in their prime that Philadelphia has. And then they added Vic Fangio and added Kellen Moore. They did a lot of great things. But I think for people who are saying that Christian McCaffrey is done, Christian McCaffrey is not done. They have enough offensive weapons. But I get what you're saying. I just think that they're in go-get-it mode because they're going to give Brock money. They're going to extend guys. They're going to be smart. They're going to have a last-place schedule. Does that mean they're going to go far in the playoffs? What I'm saying is they're going to be a playoff team based on their schedule. But are the 49ers, to your point, are they with Detroit? No. Are they with Philly? No. Are they on par with the Rams? The Rams want to get rid of Matthew Stafford. Then the Niners are better than the Rams. But the teams that are at the upper, the teams that are going up because of their young talent in Detroit, in Philly, in Green Bay, Minnesota is going to be interesting because Minnesota is going to take a massive chance and say that J.J. McCarthy is as good as what Sam Darnold does this year, and I'll bet you he's not. So we'll see what happens. But they're not upper echelon, I'll say that. They are not Philly. They are not Detroit. They are not Green Bay. I don't know if they're Minnesota, but then they're that next level down. And they're going to go for it. All due respect to Tim, that's not breaking news because the alternative is what? That they just gave Brandon Ayuk 30 and they're going to extend Brock and they're going to give Kittle money and they're going to go, they're going to keep building this thing. They're going to keep taking shots at this thing until the wheels fall off of it. They're not where the Warriors are. I mean, Jimmy Butler paraded to the free throw line a bunch tonight, which was really, really cool. But I mean, the Warriors are in desperation mode. I don't think that's where the Niners are. Do you?
Well, I mean, I'll say this. What do you think the price tag is going to be for Myles Garrett? Because I think
he's going to need an extension too, right?
Probably going to be. Yeah. Well, it's very cap friendly the first year. He's going to have a $6.5 million hit the first year. But I mean, realistically, you're probably going to have to trade 2 first-round picks to get him. And
I don't think you're going to have to do that.
I don't think so?
The only reason I don't think that is he's already asked for the trade, so they've already lost their leverage. And the other teams that are going to want Myles Garrett, and he's going to want because he says he wants to go to a winner. So I haven't seen what the odds are, but let's just use some logic here. Detroit needs somebody opposite Hutchinson. They've got a late pick. The Commanders are a playoff team. They traded both Chase Young, as we all know too well, and Sweat to the Bears. So they need somebody. Their number one guy had about 10.5 sacks last year, but he's a free agent. So they are desperate. The Commanders need it. The Detroit needs it. He's not going to go to Green Bay. He's not going to go to Dallas because they can't win, even though he's from Arlington. And the Browns would probably want to trade him to the NFC. The Bills could use the help, something like that. I mean, it could be a situation with the Chiefs, kind of like with Durant coming to the Warriors, where it's like, oh, we lost the championship. Had they won it, he wouldn't go there. I could see now Myles Garrett going, yeah, I'll go to the Chiefs and team up with Chris Jones. So, I think there's a lot of teams, but all the teams I just mentioned who would need him, who are going to win, their pick is near the end of the first round. And I don't know that the Niners would give this up, but I certainly would. If the Niners say to the Browns, we'll give you 11. I mean, if you're the Browns, I don't know how you turn that down. Like they could turn around and say, we want a 3. And if I'm the Niners, I'm going, then take Detroit's 29th pick or take Kansas City's 31st pick. Go ahead. But we'll give you 11. And that's as good as they're going to get. You're even for really good players nowadays, you're not getting top 10 picks unless you're talking about an elite player.
It's just an awful lot to give away, man, because you're talking about a guy who's already played 8 full years in the NFL.
But if you're in the mode the Niners are, and they're in the mode to win the championship right now. Now, whether they can or not, highly debatable. There's no question. But they think they are. And Nick Bosa's been screaming for somebody across from him outside of D Ford who couldn't stay healthy. Who's the guy opposite him? Leonard Floyd was decent this year, but Leonard Floyd really, if you had Myles Garrett, what you would do is you'd put Garrett as one side, Bosa as the other, and then Floyd would come down in on third down, and Garrett would kick inside. for third down, and you'd have a ridiculous turbo package, and you could get there with 4s. And what we are as a sports society is we are sheep. So however a team wins, we want to do that. So every team in the league is going to go, we got to get there with 4. We got to get there with 4. And everybody knows that, but everybody's going to shore their defensive line now this offseason. They're going to try to find that, that 4 that can get them homes without having to blitz. That's going to be the big hot thing now. And so Myles Garrett, he's going to cost you a lot, but I don't think he's going to cost you more than 11. And the thing I love the draft. Me and you are dorks for the draft. You're much smarter than me when it comes to the draft. But if I'm the Niners and I'm in a window, and I think I am I going to go 50-50 that one of these guys not named Abdul Carter is going to fall to me? Because I like Walter Nolan and I like all the guys you mentioned inside, and I like some of these guys like Mikael Williams. I like James Pierce, the kid out of Tennessee. Like, I like these guys, and some of these guys are going to hit, and some of these guys aren't. But if you're in a window, Myles Garrett is 100% going to hit. It's just a matter of you got to pay him a lot of money. And you got to give up number 11. And that's going to be the big question, because no one else in the league who can win is going to have as high of a pick as the 49ers will have to give to the Browns.
I think they're delusional. That's not the team that I saw this year. They won 6 games. Okay. They beat nobody good all year. They weren't good. The quarterback's decent. The running backs got major Achilles problems. The fullback's old. The tight end's old. They have no backup at either spot. They're not winning the Super Bowl with Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings. I mean, this just in. That would be the worst wide receiver tandem in the history of football to ever win the Super Bowl. If somehow the Niners won the Super Bowl with Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings. I mean, look at the teams that have won the Super Bowl. They've had much, much better receivers than that. That's their offensive line. They don't have a right tackle, a center, or a left guard, and there's only 5 spots on the offensive line. And that's just on offense. And in reality, their defense couldn't stop anybody. They're not good at tackle. They're not really good opposite Bosa. Greenlaw's old, and they just don't look very good. They don't have good linebackers. They don't have a starting free safety. They don't have any speed at corner. I mean, they're totally and utterly delusional if they think that they're going to plug in one great player at any position. I don't care if you got a great quarterback. They're more than one player away. And if they don't see that, then that's on them. And it's going to be a very painful lesson, and it's going to cost them their jobs. So we'll see what direction they go. But this delusion of, hey, we're just one guy away, is you're not one guy away. You're going to get that guy. You're going to dial up pressure on yourself, and then you're going to fail, and then you're going to get fired. So I'm all for making good decisions, but I'm not. There's a right time and a wrong time to go all in on one guy, and when you've already gone all in on 2 different guys and come up, craps both times, this is not the time to then go do it a third time, because you have no depth. You have no, even if Myles Garrett's awesome, so what? I mean, you play your defensive lineman in a rotation. The guys coming off the bench can't play dead. And you're not good in any phase of the game. You're not good on special teams. You're not good on offense. I don't know. I think it's totally delusional if they think that they're a Myles Garrett from beating the Philadelphia Eagles. Really, they have been drafting, really, really well for a number of years. You basically struck out on 21, 22, and 23 drafts. Back to back to back, and you have one good draft in 24. What you really need this year is you need your 1986 draft. You don't need Jerry Rice. You need 7 starters. If the Niners got 7 starters, they have 7 positions that they could easily go with new starters. So I hope they don't do that. I hope they don't do that. And then the other one, it's not Myles Garrett's not the only guy out there. It's not just Myles Garrett. There's a lot of talk today that the Raiders may trade Max Crosby. There's a lot of talk today that the Bengals may wind up saying goodbye to Trey Hendrickson. Those guys are both names to monitor. Jeremy Fowler says Crosby and Hendrickson.
Well, Crosby will cost you a ton more than what Myles Garrett will, and if I'm the Raiders, he's untouchable. As
Yeah,
untouchable
well, you
as
know the
anybody
Raiders
can get in
wouldn't
the league.
trade
Yeah,
him to
but
the Niners.
they won't trade him to the Niners. And then Hendrickson's is vastly underrated. But they've got to get somebody outside of Bosa. I'm not as down on him because I think the schedule's easy. I think that the injuries that happen and the weirdness will not happen. The football gods just don't do that to you 2 years in a row. They will score points, and they're going to address the interior of the offensive line in free agency, and they have enough money. It's defense to me. And that's where Myles Garrett comes in, is because if Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa are on the field at the same time and you have general health, you're going to get there with 4 no matter who's inside. Warner's still good. I think they need to go Sherwood instead of Dre Greenlaw, unfortunately. And then, like you said, the thing that does scare me is I like Renardo Green fine, Demo's fine. The safety scare the hell out of me because I didn't see it from Jair Brown last year. And Malik Mustafa he's a missile, and I love the guy, but he's undisciplined and can give up plays. Hafunga's not coming back. He's going to be far too expensive. Obviously, Ward's not coming back. His wife has PTSD and is never going to come back to California because of the thing that happened off the field. So, I agree with you. There is a lot of work to be done. They've got to get general health. They're getting older. I don't think there's any question about it. But I think they're a playoff team with general health just because they have such an easy schedule. And then it's going to come from there. Are you a team that's going to lose in the wild card round? Potentially. But I also know that this team was in the Super Bowl a year ago, absolutely got devastated by injuries, by Ayuk's situation, by Williams' situation. I'm not saying they're up with the Lions because they're not. They're not up with the Lions. They're not up with the Eagles. They're not up with the Packers. But then that next level of team, if Minnesota's going with J.J. McCarthy, I don't think Minnesota's going to be what they were a year ago. If the Rams are talking about getting rid of Matthew Stafford, I don't care how old Stafford is, man. He's a gamer, and he wins games at the end. And they've got a great young team. There's no doubt about it. But who's your quarterback? Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, that's Aaron Rodgers is going to go to the Rams and do something. So, a lot can happen in a year because I think we left Philly for dead a year ago, and they made a bunch of shrewd moves. But I'll go to your point, which is 100% accurate. Howie Roseman had been stacking that team forever. And it was just they needed a lot of direction, and they got that direction. So, look, I'm not under the illusion that the 49ers are the team they were when we were automatically putting them in the Super Bowl. But I also think that if their direction is they think they can still go for it, I think that's okay. They're not in a rebuild. They're not a middle-of-the-pack team, especially with this schedule. They don't play anybody next year, and that could
No,
save
it's
them.
an easy schedule. It's an easy schedule for sure. But I mean, they didn't beat anybody this year. And the best team they beat all year were the Buccaneers, who rolled in with no Chris Godwin and no Mike Evans, and the Niners beat that Buccaneers team at home. That was the best win of the year. The rest of the year, they didn't really beat anybody. They beat Dallas, they beat New England. I mean, they beat some real dog meat teams, but I mean, they got worked in their division. They got worked badly by the Cardinals, Rams, and
like you said,
Seahawks.
if we're sitting here, you and I, and it's opening week, and we're previewing whoever they're playing in week number 1, and they haven't greatly addressed both lines, then I would agree with you because from a skill position standpoint, if they're healthy, they should be fine offensively. Defensively, there are definitely some holes, especially on the inside of the interior. But if they did get Garrett, he would take a lot of that away just because of the pressure he's going to get, and you're going to get singled inside. But look, if you and I are sitting here pre-week 1 doing the preview of week 1, and we're still talking about, Jake Brendel as the center and Malik Collins inside and guys like that who need to have big years, then they're sunk. There's just no question about it because they have guys. But this isn't what Philly did to Kansas City in the Super Bowl is not something new. They just, we've talked about it forever. But what happens is the low-hanging fruit for the national media becomes quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. And they don't talk about the offensive and defensive lines until somebody gets smoked like Patrick Mahomes did. And then it was all day long on the talking head shows for ESPN. It was about how bad Mahomes is. It's hard, as Brock Purdy knows, to throw the ball from your back. And that's what he did the whole time. So, look, Mahomes had a bad game. He has 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in his Super Bowl life. The Niners had him looking the same way in Super Bowl 54. They had him looking the same way last year in Super Bowl 59 until that ball went off Ray-Ray McCloud's foot. I was waiting for that momentum-changing play yesterday. Like, where's the screw-up? The Philly never had it. And the Niners could have won that Super Bowl had that ball not gone off his foot, but then all the momentum changed. but they never got on Mahomes like the Eagles did yesterday. They never got on Mahomes like Tampa Bay did a few years ago with that line. It's all about, when they went to Super Bowl 54, it was all about the line. The defensive line for the Niners has to go back to being the most the most dominant unit of their team. And until it does that, you're right. They're not going to go anywhere.
And Myles Garrett could help put them there for sure. It's just a matter of, once again, I mean, when you're trading first-round draft choices that are supposed to be on your team for a decade, but you're trading them for guys who are in their 8th year in the NFL, or have already played 8 years, going to their 9th year in the NFL, you're really shortchanging your roster of a lot of years. And it's like, and you're investing a lot in an older player. And if he comes through and is awesome, maybe you get to the top. Heck, the Rams did, right? They did this with Ramsey and Von Miller and Stafford. They were striking out in the draft. Look at the Rams draft picks, and then Les Snead's like, screw this. We're just going to trade these guys for veterans, and it's very safe, but it's also very limiting. And then the Rams had to say goodbye to some of those guys. They did win the Super Bowl, though. And if the Niners win the Super Bowl, all will be forgotten. But if they don't win the Super Bowl, man, you're really shortchanging yourself. Okay, couple last thoughts. One, there was some talk today also about Josh DeBow said that Jed York says, I know we want Brock here for a long, long time, and I believe we will make that work. There was a report right around the Super Bowl, maybe a couple days ago, saying that the 49ers were likely to get the Purdy deal done maybe really early, maybe around the time of free agency. I kind of look at that as kind of the unofficial deadline. I mean, if you want to sign a free agent, and they have a lot of money earmarked of cap room for Brock, but I think they also have saved enough where they could be players in the free agent market for somebody, maybe more along the lines of what Green Bay did last year, where you don't get a bunch of guys, but you get 2 pretty good players. They got Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs and called it a year. Well, I could see the Niners doing something kind of similar. You sign Brock, and maybe you sign a couple of free agents. Maybe you get DJ Reed and who knows, somebody, Chris Dahlman's kid, Drew Dahlman, and you call it an off season. But what do you think? I mean, I personally think that the deadline's got to be like the beginning of the beginning of the NFL new year. I mean, get it done by March 1st, because otherwise, how do you realistically go sign anybody if you have a massive quarterback contract that's still, yet to be negotiated? I'd love to see them, get the Brock deal done, not in camp, not in mini camp, but in April or preferably March before free agency. What do you think?
I think it's going to be tough only because of the agent. The agent's going to want to see what the lay of the land is going to be. And there's no other big contracts. That's the one thing that gives Brock a big advantage, is that it's all out on the table. And then it becomes about, how much is guaranteed and all the fluff and all these kind of different things. So there's going to be that. But in terms of like the guaranteed money, the AAV, all the different things that he needs, all those young quarterbacks that are comparable to him, they've already been signed. Jalen Hurts has been signed. Love has been signed. Tua has been signed. Trevor Lawrence has been signed. So all these guys that are his peers in his age group, they've all been signed. The number's really not that different. But it was the same thing that happened with Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was the last one. We all knew what the number was going to be. He wanted 30. And we were all just sitting around going, remember all those receivers who signed last year? Just boom, 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 one after the other. And Waddle and Smith and A.J. Brown got extended and all these different guys. We knew, Jefferson. We knew he wasn't in the Jefferson camp. CeeDee Lamb gets signed. Like, we're sitting around last year going, we know the number. Sign the damn guy. And so they're going back and forth. So it seemed easy, but they never got him in. It's the same thing here. What the number is pretty simple. The AAV is around 55. It's probably going to be that. Maybe it's going to be a touch higher because he's the latest, but it's going to be in that range. We saw the guarantees that all those guys that I just mentioned got. It's really not a difficult thing. What it comes down to a lot of times is the agent and the players union. The agent wants to make a big splash to say, hang on, Brock, hang on. Don't get crazy. I got to look good here too. The players union says you're the latest, so you got to be the greatest as far as getting the pay. And this whole disillusion with fans, he's not worth it. I got news for you. None of these guys not named Mahomes or Allen or Jackson is worth it. Dak Prescott's not worth it. Tua's not worth it. Jordan Love's not worth it. Go on down the line. But they're the latest, and they're going to get paid. So the numbers, Krug, as you well know, are already out on the table. It's just a matter of this dance that they have to do back and forth between the Niners, the agent, the players union, who want him to get paid at this really high level so he can pay it forward to everybody else. It's this whole dance that has to be played, when the reality is, if it was just up to Brock and the Niners, they would probably hammer out a deal in the timeline that you're talking about, but it just becomes so difficult. And then, okay, we agreed on the AAV, we agreed on this number, but we can't agree on that number. And everybody thinks Brock is this nice guy. It doesn't matter what Brock is. It matters what the agent is, and the Niners are. And it's Brock does want to get into camp. He said it sitting at the lockers. You were standing right there. But there's a lot of dance to be done. So I think it's really hard. I would be excited if it was done by like June 1st, because I don't think it's going to get done that fast. I think it should. But like, remember Tua last year? It was late and he kept coming in and he would go to OTAs and they'd ask him about the deal and he was getting frustrated. And we know what the number is going to be, man. It really shouldn't be that hard, but it's going to be for some weird reason, because it always is.
The Super Bowl has a tendency. I mean, it's not just another game. It's a defining game. It's a defining game in a lot of ways, right? If you never have won it, that's a stain on you. Ask Dan Marino how he feels about the Super Bowl. He didn't win, and he thought he was going back, and he never went back. And if you play great in this game, you're a legend. Joe Montana played in 4 Super Bowls. He won all 4. He had 127.8 rating in those 4 Super Bowls. He had 11 touchdowns. He didn't have a single pick, and he didn't lose a single game. So he's Joe Cool forever. He's 4-0 with 11 touchdowns and no picks. Tom Brady has made a ton of Super Bowls and has won a bunch. Mahomes, had only lost 1. Now he's 3-2. Does Mahomes' status change at all because he lost that game yesterday? How do you view? I've heard people say, well, Mahomes in 7 Super Bowl or in 7 or he got 7 touchdowns and 7 picks.
7, yeah.
In the Super Bowl. So he's got just the same number of touchdowns as interceptions. Montana's got 11-0. But Mahomes has been to more, and Brady's been to a lot more. I'm trying to be fair-minded about this, but at the same time, it's like, do you take anything at all? Is Mahomes' career in any way less today for having lost yesterday? Because the one thing the people who want to be like, oh, Joe's the best, I don't know if Joe's the best, but I'll say this: Joe didn't have a game like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Joe didn't have any games where he was just horrible, where he was just turning it over left and right, where it was like, dude, Joe, get off the freaking field. Now, John Elway did. John Elway had that game in Super Bowl 24 that Mahomes had yesterday. He had that game against the Niners. He was terrible. He was horrible. He's still one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but it's like, I can't say that he's the best ever because I saw him in the Super Bowl single-handedly almost ruin his team's opportunity to win in Super Bowl 24. He was terrible. So I don't know. I mean, Mahomes is great. Some people would say he's the greatest, and he's definitely one of the greatest. Where do you put Joe over Brady because Joe is perfect? Do you put Brady over Joe because he's got more rings? Do you move Mahomes further down the pecking order because he's now lost 2 Super Bowls and played horribly in this last one? This game makes you a hero if you win it.
Yeah.
It's gotta conversely then make you lesser if you lose it, right? Or no? How do you see it?
Well, I think we all have short memories, and like Philadelphia a year ago was no good. Jalen Hurts couldn't play, and now they're the top of the world, right? And now they're all great, and Jalen Hurts is being talked about again like he was a couple of years ago, even though he's really not that player. And the offensive and defensive lines won that game, like we said. And he played great yesterday, but it's when you play great in those big games. It didn't do anything to me, to Mahomes, because you and I know the game. He was thrown from his ass the whole game. Travis Kelce completely missed a block and an edge. Like, look, Mahomes is great, but we saw from play 1, he was dancing around back there. He had no time to throw. And it's the same thing. I mean, we look at Brock. He didn't have the players. He didn't have the line. Offense is everybody has to play in concert. and everybody has to be in the right places and all these kind of things. So look, I would look at it like this. They won 12 one-possession games this year. They weren't a really good team. They had 12 one-possession wins because of number 15, because if he's got the ball, and the Niners should know better, if he's got the ball and it's a one-possession game, they're going to win said game. But if they're down like they were yesterday, he can't do it by himself. He's not that, and nobody could have done that. Who behind that offensive line, whether it be Joe or Brady or anybody, could have played a great game. They absolutely got overwhelmed by the defensive line. I love Joe, but Joe never got hit like that in the Super Bowl. He did against the Giants by Leonard Marshall and that crew and Jim Burt, but he never got hit like that in the Super Bowl because the Niners were too damn good and Walsh was too damn good and they had too many offensive weapons. I mean, how many Hall of Famers did Joe have around him? And I'm going to add Roger Craig because he should have been. I mean, between him and Jerry and John Taylor's not a Hall of Famer, but he's damn good. And Brent Jones is a Hall of Famer. He's damn good. But their offensive and defensive lines, the Niners, when they win Super Bowls, nobody knows it better than you. They were criminally underrated on both sides of the ball on the offensive and defensive line. So Joe had time to make the plays he had to make. Plus the West Coast offense, balls out of his hands. Joe's a great decision maker. Joe's awesome. But the same thing with Brady. But if I'm going to comp Brady to Mahomes, which a lot of people are talking about, Brady lost Super Bowls. He walked off the field a loser. But you know
lost
what?
to Eli Manning twice, right?
When I see Tom Brady walking around with 7 rings, I don't think about the times that he lost to Eli Manning. I think it's difficult to get there and to win, and it doesn't lessen anything to me for Mahomes. And the talking head guys on ESPN that we're talking all about it and how bad Mahomes is don't understand how the game is played, because it's a complete team game. And the offensive line of the Eagles dominated it and allowed Jalen Hurts to look like a great quarterback, even though he's a good quarterback. But we're overrating it today and putting Jalen Hurts back in the upper echelon of quarterbacks, which he's not. And we're rocketing Patrick Mahomes back down to earth. And I think it's laughable, because I knew last year, you and I both, when the Niners kicked that field goal in overtime, that Mahomes was taking him down the field for a touchdown. There was not a doubt in my mind. It's just when they were like, for example, they were going to put Eli Manning into the Hall of Fame and I was going to vomit. Like, they were talking all about it. Right. And I'm like, did I ever think to myself when my team played the New York Giants that I was scared as hell of Eli Manning? Because I don't know what his numbers are and I really don't care. But I never was afraid of Eli Manning. That's what it is. If Joe was on the other team and there was 2 minutes on the clock, that's the mark of a great quarterback. I'd be scared as hell if Joe had the ball with 2 minutes and Brady had the ball with 2 minutes and Mahomes had the ball with 2 minutes, down a score or 4 points. If your team's up 4 and there's 2 minutes on the clock, the measure of not anything else, not what Nick Wright says and not what Screamin' A says and not what Orlovsky says or any of these jackasses, Ryan Clark, there's 2 minutes left and your team is up 4. Who would you not want to have as the other team's quarterback? That's what you got to ask yourself. In today's game, it's Mahomes. Before, it was either Brady or Montana. There's 3 guys in the history to me. Rodgers is up there, but he's kind of tarnishing his legacy a little bit. But in the history of the game, there's 3 guys. And I don't know who the greatest is, and I don't know who deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore. I just know those 3 guys with 2 minutes left and my team up 4, I'm scared as hell because I ain't winning. I'm not winning.
Do you think Brock Purdy gets a ring?
Yeah, I think he's good. I think he's well good enough. I think, and I'm guilty of this 100% because I railed on him all year. That throw down the sideline against the Rams against double coverage, that they had to have that game or they were out of it. And they weren't a playoff team this year. They didn't deserve it. They had the injuries, the weirdness. But Brock Purdy said something after the game, and you're sitting right there dead center in that press conference, where he said, I didn't even see it. He said, there were so many bodies around, I didn't even see it. And I'm like, well, then why the hell are you throwing it? Because you hit it right on the head.
You talking about the ball that overthrew JJ in the Ram game?
He was bracketed. You can't throw that ball. So I look at Jalen Hurts this year, and they're vastly different in the style that they play. But Jalen Hurts had it perfect. He had Saquon Barkley, who was Christian McCaffrey the year before. He had great receivers. He had a great offensive line. He had it perfectly. If you had to have a script for how the Eagles would have it with Jalen Hurts, that was it. And when the Lions were rolling, what Goff had, Goff's not a great quarterback, but Goff had Gibbs, and he had thunder and lightning in the backfield, a big offensive line, Jamison Williams coming into his own, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Laporta at tight end. And he's playing every one of his games inside. I mean, those guys can look like all world beaters, and they're great. And I put Brock in that same category. He's with Hurts. He's with Jared Goff. He's with those kind of quarterbacks because when they have everything right and going for them, they can look all world. The difference between Mahomes is, yeah, he looked terrible yesterday. There's no question. And he played a bad game. And that's what the quarterbacks get paid for, because they take the bullets. You played a bad game. Hey, Patrick Mahomes, what did you think? He's not going to rail his offensive line. He's not going to say that his defense sucked. He's not going to say all these things that were the actuality. You're the quarterback. You take the bullets. So that's part of your job. So he's just going to eat that, because that's what Patrick Mahomes does. But he's one of 3 quarterbacks in the league right now with Allen and Lamar Jackson that can carry teams on their back. The other quarterbacks in the league, every single one of them, but those 3, needs help, needs a lot of help. And Brock Purdy is in that same category. Hurts needs help. All these guys need help. Goff needs help. What quarterback? I mean, so does Mahomes. We saw that yesterday. But there's only 2 or 3 elite quarterbacks right now, and the rest are just guys. So that means if the Niners put enough people around Brock, he can win a ring. Hell, he could have won a ring last year if the defense would have come up with a stop, or Kyle would have been more aggressive in his play calling. You could say that about Garoppolo too. I think he's better than Garoppolo. Wouldn't you say that? I mean, a lot of people are confident in Garoppolo, and I'm going,
I said he was
man.
better than Garoppolo when Garoppolo was being carted off in the Miami game. I said the 49ers just got a whole lot better at quarterback, and there were people in the first row who turned around in the press box and shot me just the angriest glare. It's like, dude, is he your freaking son? Why are you glaring at me? Because I told you that the backup's better than this guy? I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, there's, Garoppolo's thick, man. When I say thick, I'm talking about he's not the smartest guy.
By the way, somebody bounced in with Burrow too. Burrow's really good. Joe Burrow is really good. I'm not saying he's not. He's really, really good. But you get my drift, that there's a number. Okay, you might want to put Burrow in there too. He had a hell of a season for a team that tried to get back into the playoff picture. Burrow's really good. But the majority of the quarterbacks in this league are guys that they need help around him. When the Rams early in the season were banged up. Yeah, when the Rams were banged up early in the season, Stafford couldn't do it on his own. All of a sudden, Puka comes back and Kupp comes back and the O-line comes back. And guess what? Matthew Stafford looks good. I mean, that's just for 99% of the quarterbacks in the league. That's the deal. You start taking offensive linemen away and skill guys away and all that, and then everybody's going, well, that guy sucks. Well, yeah, Brock sucks because he tried to do too much this year. And the one thing he's not supposed to do, Brock, stick to the script, don't turn the ball over. And what he tried to do was, my defense sucks, my special teams suck worse, and I don't have any skill players. I got to try to win this thing myself. That's not what Brock Purdy can do.
Well, I mean, think about it logically, too. I mean, he didn't have Ayuk, his best deep threat all year, and yet his yards per attempt went up this year. Well, why is that? Why did his yards per attempt go up if he didn't have his deep threat and he should have been checking it down? Well, one, he didn't have CMC, so that's a big part of it. Yeah. He took too many chances. He drove the ball down the field too much. He was too aggressive, and he turned it over. Why did he turn it over? He turned it over because he tried to make too many plays because his whole arsenal was diminished. Okay, 2 last thoughts and we'll get out of here. Do you have I know it's early in the draft process. It's only February. We haven't even seen the combine.
Doesn't matter, man. Let's go.
Is there any, if I said to you, it doesn't have to be like, Walter Nolan. It doesn't have to be somebody that you're going to pick in the first round. It just be, if I just said, give me 2 or 3 names of guys. Don't have to be in the first round. Doesn't have to be in any round. Doesn't have to be a certain position. It could be any position. But if I said, give me 2 or 3 names of guys that you would absolutely want to see the Niners get in this draft, anybody come to mind? Or is it too early? Am I asking this question
first and foremost, as much as we've talked about Myles Garrett and the things that he would solve, if you want a young Myles Garrett, I don't know why he would fall. Weird things happen during the draft. Jalen Carter shouldn't have lasted to 10 to the Eagles, right? But speaking of Carters, if Abdul Carter were to somehow slip, I don't know. Right now, what they need to do is do a Laramie Tunsil if you're the Giant or if you're the Niners. Hey, I heard he likes to smoke a lot of weed, and why don't you do like one of those things where you do because we can do all these things with computers now. Put that big mask that they had on Laramie Tunsil on Abdul Carter and make him slide and pick him at 11. Like that dude, I mean, today, tomorrow, whenever he gets into camp, he's going to get 10, 12 sacks right away. I mean, he's like Jared Verse, but better. Like what he did for the Rams this year, that's what Carter is going to do right away for whatever team gets him. That dude is such a badass. So I'm not saying it's realistic. If I had the first pick if I'm Tennessee, I know that Will Levis puts mayonnaise in his coffee, and therefore he should never be my starting quarterback. But if I'm Tennessee, you're not a quarterback away, guys. And Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders aren't it. I would take Carter with the first overall pick, or I would trade down with a quarterback needy team, try to stay within the top 5 and get Carter. I love that guy. He's not going to be on the board, but like I said, guys slip. It's the weirdest thing. Guys slip in that range where the Niners are. Micah Parsons. What was Micah Parsons? The 12th pick in the draft? Like Carter reminds me of Parsons. And it's like, how is Mike? Like, I remember that draft. I'm sure you and I were sitting next to each other. Like, why is no one's going to take Micah Parsons? And he sat there for
well,
like
you know what happened?
Dallas. It was like,
you know what happened
doing?
there is that Micah Parsons got involved in a really, really ugly hazing incident at Penn State.
Well, let's spread that rumor that happened to Carter. Get him.
Yeah, exactly.
Spread rumors.
I don't know about Abdul Carter, but Micah Parsons had some really bad hazing situation, and he was projected to go in the top 3 or 4 picks of the draft.
That's what
he fell because
and
of
so
that.
So was Jalen Carter. Like, I'm just like,
Jalen Carter had a car issue.
Yeah, there was a guy who died. He didn't do it, but he was around.
Situation.
Yeah, so that was a bad deal. Look, I'm joking. I don't want anything to happen to tank these guys, but it just seems like every year a guy that you're going, why is he not off the board, is sliding in that range. And we've talked about them moving down, which I wouldn't be against because I think they need to with their, as you've pointed out, the top heaviness of their salary situation. They need to bring in a boatload of guys. But if somebody like that is slipping, I like Mason Graham. Mason Graham, I don't think is Jalen Carter. I like him, but I'm not in love with him. But if he were there, Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan, I don't think they need they don't need corners as much, but I like him. Williams, Mikael Williams, the kid out of Georgia, is like, he's central casting as far as his body is concerned.
Weaned on a Nautilus machine.
He does. He looks like, he's gonna, you're gonna win all bus team with him.
Yeah, he's the first guy off the bus.
Yeah. So I gotta see, what he does at the combine and stuff. But I really like him. What are some other guys? Offensive line. That's the one thing is I don't think they're going to go offensive line in the first round because I don't think they need to, because I think there's just a ton of great offensive linemen that are coming out of this draft. But there's some really good offensive linemen, and I don't think I'm not as big on Banks. I like Campbell, the kid out of LSU, but a couple of guys, Simmons, the kid out of Ohio State. There's a couple of Ohio State guys that are really nice, but I don't want to see them taking one of those guys at 11. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. And I know that everybody, like Mayoko did a mock draft the other day, and he took Tyler Warren at 11. And I love Tyler Warren, and you and I have talked about Kittle, and I think Warren is just a notch below Bowers. But, man, there are like 10 tight ends in this draft that are killer. And if the Niners, I'll say this about it, and then I'll go to you because I know you got a lot more guys than I do. If the Niners don't come out of this draft with a solid backup finally for George Kittle, then I don't know what draft they're going to do it in. Because honestly, there are maybe there's not 10, but there's probably 8 really good tight ends in this draft, and they've got to get one. And I don't think they have to get one at 11 because it's so deep, but I think they need to go defensive line in the first round, or trenches defense first round. And then second round, maybe one of those offensive linemen that slips. And then in that third round area, I think that the kid out of Michigan, or Evans, the kid out of Notre Dame, or Fannin, the kid out of Bowling Green, or we go down to LSU as a really nice tight end. Like there's a number of tight ends that they can get. And if they can't get one to complement Kittle, then I give up. Like, seriously, I give up. And I don't know if they can pick him, because Latu sucked at Alabama and he sucked here. Oh, and Willis is an H-back type. He was never going to block well enough. I guess he's still on the roster, but he's not any good. They got to get somebody. It's not the top priority, which is why I don't think they're going to take Tyler Warren at 11. Somebody's going to overdraft him because I don't want to miss out on the next Brock Bowers. I really like him, especially go back and watch the USC game. He was, what did he catch, 20 balls in that game? He was ridiculous, and I love him, but I'm not taking him at 11. So anyway, that was a long-winded answer. Sorry.
No,
that was really long-winded.
I'm going to give you 3 names that I love, and they're not going in the first round, but I love these guys. And
this is why I love you, man. You're like, come on.
3 guys that I just absolutely
You're
love.
An amateur. You're an amateur.
Absolutely love. I'm going to share the screen on this one. This is Demetrius Knight from South Carolina. He's from Locust Grove, Georgia. This guy's unbelievable. And MVP, team captain of the team, 6-year player. Started at Georgia Tech, transferred, all ACC academic honor roll. Super smart guy. Linebacker, so fast. 4-year starter at quarterback in high school. The guy's incredible. His cousin, by the way, is D'Angelo Hall.
Very nice. So you know he's got some fire in him, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's also a distant cousin of Gladys Knight and Aretha Franklin.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously.
Hey,
Anyway,
I got to tell you something.
Demetrius
just for those,
Knight.
to give you, like, you have cred when it comes to the draft. But when we were doing a draft show a number of years ago, Dre Greenlaw ran a 4.73 coming out.
Right.
And he was out of Arkansas. Nobody liked him. You were telling me about Dre Greenlaw before the draft. And I was looking at tape of him, and he looked a lot faster than the 4.73. And that's what you told me. Go watch Dre Greenlaw. He's a lot faster than 4.73. I really like this guy. They take him in the 5th round, and I remember going to you, bro, they took your guy. And then yeah, that was it. That was it. Yeah, you loved him. Faster. You loved him. So when it comes to linebackers, man, I'm on you, whatever you say.
I do seriously. Linebacker is probably one of my favorite positions. So Demetrius Knight. And there's a lot of fast linebackers, but that guy's amazing. And he closes space so fast, and the guy's so smart. And then I saw some interviews that he did, and he's like one of these guys that like nothing's ever good enough. Like he's like one of these guys that nothing except for ultimate success is ever good enough, which I love that kind of personality type. I hate the guys who are like, I thought I was pretty good. No, you sucked. I'd rather have the guys who are like, you know what? I sucked. And they're like, no, dude, you're badass. No, I still suck. You know what I mean? I was kind of the opposite of this in high school. Hey, did you do good on the test? Yeah, I think I did good. C-. Then, my brother would come home. Hey, did you do good on the test? No, I think I bombed it. A-. It's like, you just
I was the same way. I feel really good about this thing.
I feel good. I don't know why.
I'm telling you, same
All
thing.
right, so that's the first guy, Demetrius Knight. Now, this second one I'm going to show you comes from Guy Haberman. I interviewed Guy Haberman, who does a lot of college football. And I said, Guy, this was like months ago. I said, Guy, give me a guy that you really saw this year that you love. And he didn't even hesitate. He just said, this guy, Oluwafemi Oladejo.
Wow, look at you. Have you been practicing that one?
Yeah, I have. I have been practicing.
Very nice.
Practicing. Oluwafemi Oladejo.
Papa would hate that if they draft that guy. Papa and Tim Ryan are going to hate that.
Oh, no,
they're going to have to find a nickname for him.
Ted Robinson, Michael Hamanawananui. Remember that guy from Arizona?
Ted just
Michael Hamanawananui.
I mean, he just sat in front of the mirror, but man, when it came down to it, man, he nailed it.
He nailed him.
Oluwafemi
Oladejo. Okay, so great name. He is a NorCal guy. He's from Elk Grove, up near Sac. He went to Consumnes Oaks High School. He started off at Cal, and he was an inside backer. He was a stack backer at Cal, and he was good. I mean, I can remember watching him at Cal. So he plays 2 years at Cal. Another super smart guy, academic honor roll, 3-time member of the academic honor roll. And you say, well, Krug, why do you keep talking about smarts? Because football players are really smart. The difference between who makes it and who doesn't make it are the guys who make it are smart. Why? Because you play a different game plan every week. You've got to know. It's like taking a class. It's like learning a foreign language. You have to keep up. If you're just a freaking moron, you're cooked. You won't be able to make it. Dumb guys don't last. I mean, dumb guys don't. You got to be smart. Johnny knows it, but I don't know if you guys all know this. These guys show up. These guys show up with a laptop and a briefcase. This is not North Dallas 40. Okay, these guys show up with a laptop and a briefcase and sometimes a tie. And I mean, these guys are the football players are not. Yeah, they're big and rough and tough, but they're smart. The smartest guys make it. Anyway, Oladejo was a stack backer. They moved him just this year. He went 2 years as an inside backer at Cal. He transfers to UCLA. He's 1 year as a stack backer at UCLA. They put him at defensive end this year, John. He totally dominated. and he's no longer 250. He's probably more like 260. He went to the Shrine game. He totally dominated the one-on-ones. And then in the game, he had a sack. He's kind of like a tone-setting player. He's like the guy that gets everybody super fired up and ready to go. He's the guy that's going to lead you out of the tunnel. I mean, he is just, wired to lead. Super smart, super athletic, unbelievably aggressive. 260 pounds now on a 6'3" frame. Edge rusher. Beastly edge rusher, Olufemi Oladejo. That's the second guy.
I love that you just nailed that name. You just nailed
him.
You nailed it like 5 times.
And my favorite guy in the draft, is this 5'10", 270-pound center who I think could replace Juszczyk. They list him here at 6 feet, 275. He's more like 5'10", 285. He's more like 5'10", 285. Now, the only reason I know this guy is that my buddy, who I scouted with in the Canadian League, the great Rick Mueller, is now working as Coastal Carolina's recruiting coordinator. Right?
Is that a connection to Randy Mueller? No?
Yes, his little brother.
Oh, is it really? Oh,
yes,
wow.
Randy's little brother. Yeah, okay. Randy is a good friend too. Randy's back with the Saints now. Randy was doing a podcast for a while, doing the media thing. He was working for The Athletic. He's now just signed on with the Saints. So I tried to get him on the show the other day, and he's like, hey.
5'10", 2-step, like, that's beefy.
That's beefy. 5'10", 285.
I mean,
okay?
Dude, seriously.
5'10", 285. And so
that's
he
like
transferred.
Patrick Ricard of the Ravens. What's Ricard,
right.
300?
This guy could play center, he could play guard, or he could play fullback. And he's just a monster.
You got a picture of him? I got to see this. I got to see this guy.
Are you not seeing him?
5'10", 285.
Hold on a second. Wait a second. Am I not? Yeah. Oh, wait. I'm still on.
I still got the UCLA guy up. I want to see this guy.
Hold on.
I want to see 5'10", 285. I mean, seriously, that's beefy.
Let me stop sharing there.
If that guy comes home for like Christmas break or something, you're like, oh man,
dude,
he's crushing the table.
Lampkin. Yeah, here's Lampkin. There he is.
Seriously,
look at that.
That is what is he plays center and guard, interior
center
lineman?
Guard. But I mean, I'm telling you, this guy could be a fullback. Here's why I love him, Johnny. Here's why I love him. This guy, if you go back and dig deep into the files, and I had some people kind of tell me about this guy early on. He is not just a great offensive lineman. He was an all-world wrestler. So this guy was unbelievable. He was 40. He finished as the Class 3A state runner-up in the 2018 wrestling thing as a junior in high school. He was 46-4. Then won his weight class with a perfect 9-0 record at the Disney Dual meet in June of 19. He was the number one wrestler, ranked as the number one wrestler in Class 2A his senior year. I love the wrestling background. He defeated this guy named Mason Arnold from Jesuit High School in Tampa in the finals with a takedown in the final 34 seconds. He wrestles at 285, and he was 47-0 his senior year in high school. 47-0.
They better get they have the best food down at the Niners. They got this whole thing, and everybody's on certain diets and everything like that. It's amazing. They're gonna this guy's just be like beef him up and play fullback. Okay, man, we're gonna beef up the offensive line, the center and the guard, like we talked about. But then we're gonna put this dude in front of McCaffrey. No more pretty boy 44. No more a couple of catches. Maybe this, that, the other. Hybrid fullback thing. This is just like crushing helmets kind of a guy, right? I mean, this is like
no, but I got to show you.
Helmets.
I got to show you the one-on-one that this kid did in Mobile, because he was a monster in Mobile. Okay, and he's got this one where he throws this guy down, slams him down, and then stood over him, and then came back and shook his hand. And I want to see if I can find the part where he shook his hand, because the guy was incredible. Willie Lampkin is his name. Wait. They keep editing it out. Here it is. I'm going to show you this. This is a guy from PFF who I follow. Okay, I'm going to show you this. Look at this little breakdown on this guy from PFF. Okay, here it is. Hold on. Let's see. Wait.
And Willie Lampkin.
Here we go.
We got to talk about the biggest underdog here at the Reese's Senior Bowl, and that is North Carolina interior offensive lineman Willie Lampkin. Now, he was a dominant player for the Tar Heels this past season. He is the highest graded power forward guard, highest pass blocking grade, and the second highest run blocking grade in the Power 4. But he's 5'10", 270 pounds. He's 3 inches shorter than any offensive lineman that we've seen, and he's the second lightest offensive lineman ever. He did not let those measurables keep him from dominating here, though, at the Senior Bowl, holding up against some of the best D tackles in the draft, like Deion Walker and Walter Nolan. Walker in particular, 9 inches taller, 70 pounds heavier than Willie Lampkin. Lampkin is backing up the PFF grades here at the Senior Bowl, and he's showing that even though he's a massive outlier with his size, he still deserves a place on this field. We got to talk about the biggest underdog.
Dude, that's so incredible.
Senior Bowl, and that is
So wait,
That's
wait
so
a second.
incredible because Deion Walker, for those who don't know, he didn't have a great year this year. But there were people talking about Deion Walker, the guy that he was just shown manhandling, the kid out of Kentucky. And like you said, he's like 6'6", 345. And before this past year, people were talking about him as maybe like a first-round pick, top 20 pick out of Kentucky. And he just didn't have a very good year. And then that dude at 5'10", 270 just manhandled his ass. I mean, Walker's like 6'6",
This is my favorite rep.
345.
This is my favorite rep of the week, though. Watch this rep. He manhandles this guy, throws him down so hard, steps over him, which is true disrespect, then comes over and offers his hand. Watch this. Watch Lampkin here at the end. Throws that guy down. Ooh. Steps over him. Oh, wait, I'll go back and shake his hand. Hey, how you doing? That's just awesome. That is just awesome.
Probably what happened too is dudes were looking at him like, seriously, this little guy is going to try to block me, and all of a sudden he's just like you said, that wrestling background.
5'10", 270.
Yeah,
He's probably more like 5'11", 285. But I mean, beast. And when you're a wrestler, what I love about the wrestling thing is when you get on that wrestling mat, it's either you or him, right? There ain't no, hey, man, you get a participation trophy. Nope. You either win or you lose. And I love that because, so much in team sports is about like the group thing. But, man, I mean, you got to block that guy across from you. And guys who take it personally, and the guys with the wrestling background, they play with leverage. I mean, could you imagine that guy as a lead blocker? Instead of Juszczyk on the goal line, now you're scoring. Now you want to score in the low red zone. You want to run the ball in the low red zone. Put 285-pound guy who's 48-0 as a wrestler who played offensive line at North Carolina. Put that guy in the backfield and see what that looks like in front of Juice.
Let's get a little of that going.
Seriously,
that dude.
Willie
I don't know what he's. I don't know. They probably won't draft
Lampkin.
him because he's so small. But man, somebody I think you hit it right in the head. He needs to be the Patrick Ricard. He needs to be like a fullback.
Yes.
At 5'10", 275 and just smoking people like that. That'd be sweet.
I'm telling you, and Howie Roseman, who last year, if I had said to you last year, hey, should the Niners go sign Mekhi Becton? You would have said, no, that guy's a bum. That guy, you talk about that offensive tackle for the Jets who's like way overweight and sucks? Yeah. Well, guess what? Howie Roseman looked at him and said, yeah, he's not a tackle, but if we just put him at guard next to Lane Johnson, we might really have something. They did. They won the Super Bowl. I'm just saying, sometimes you got to think outside the box. The good scouts will think outside the box.
By the way, just real quick, because I was just we were just talking about this, how the Eagles were built. I was looking at this. I tweeted this out. So, dude, this is the last 4 drafts for Howie Roseman. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean, Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams. He hit in the trenches 6 times in the last 4 drafts. And I mean, look, and that's beyond like Mitchell and DeJean because they needed him. But we're talking about Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams. All those guys in the Super Bowl dominated on both sides of the ball. Some of the offensive line, some of the defensive line. Without those guys, they don't win. I mean, like you said, look, I'd love to go out and get Myles Garrett, but they've got to go out and they got to do stuff. And then they signed Barkley and Bond in free agency, and in 2022 they traded for AJ Brown. I mean, the work that he did, and here's the scary part.
Just the Bond pick right there was amazing because he was an all-pro inside linebacker.
He was a
and he was just a guy in New
Orleans.
Orleans. Yeah,
but and that team's young. That's what's scary is, Hurts was drafted in 2020. He's 28 years old. I mean, they got the what they've done on defense with all this youth, and then along the offensive line, and Barkley's not getting paid anything because he's a running back. They've already got Hurts locked up for a long time. This is going to be a good team for a long time, and that's what the Niners have to aspire to. They've got to get to the offensive and defensive lines because Howie Roseman and this organization said, we're going to win in the trenches, and we saw it last night.
No doubt. Let's finish with a little Warriors 125-111 winners tonight over the Bucks in Milwaukee. Golden State now a game over 500, 27-26. They're 2-0 with Jimmy Butler, who had 20 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals, and only 1 turnover in the game. Golden State led by 2 after 1. They led by 7 at the half. They led by 6 going to the fourth, and they wind up winning 125-111. What'd you think of the Jimmy Butler trade, Johnny? And did you see that first game? What do you think of him? Steph says, man, he's exactly the opposite player. I didn't want to see them trade for Jimmy Butler because my thing was Jimmy Butler's problem is not that he doesn't like Miami. His problem is that Miami didn't want to pay him. But the Warriors were smart enough to trade for him, but not trade for him without signing him. So they signed him long term. So they traded for him, and then they essentially took him from unhappy to happy by paying him. I didn't want to see, and I was claiming that I would not be a Warrior fan again, and I would have held to that. If they had traded Jonathan Kuminga for Kevin Durant, I don't want to see the Warriors trade 22-year-old Jonathan Kuminga, who's got a great future, for 36-year-old Kevin Durant, who is a Hall of Famer and awesome, but we've all seen it, been there, done that. So I didn't want to see that trade. I like this trade because I didn't like Wiggins. I thought Wiggins needed a change of scenery, and I like the fact that Jimmy Butler will do what the Warriors nobody else will do, and that's take it inside, get fouled, and go to the line. And it's like, in some ways, since that's his game, he's kind of the perfect complement because the Warriors they never go to the line. They always shoot for fewer free throws than their opponent, but not tonight. The Warriors shot 38, Bucks shot 34, and Jimmy Butler had 15 free throws.
Yeah, he has 28 in 2 games. It was 11-13. He's the perfect player in that way. He doesn't shoot threes. We talked about it. He gets to the rim, and it causes a real conundrum for Bob Fitzgerald, whose whole game is screaming at a level that only dogs can hear about fouls on the other team and how the Warriors don't get to the line. Hey, Bob, there's a skill in getting to the free throw line, and Jimmy Butler is showing you what it is. How about don't jack a bunch of threes, play a physical game inside, force the officials to make those calls, and you can get to the free throw line. Nobody's anti-Warriors getting to the free throw line, but when Steph's 35 feet from the basket jacking it up, which is totally fine because he can hit those, you're not going to get the call, Bob. Oh, I can't believe there's not a foul call. It's like, hey, bro, now Jimmy Butler's gotten 28 free throws in 2 games. If you have a skill, which is to get to the rim that way, which will then open things up because he's a really good playmaker, then he's gonna hit, not only Steph, but Podziemski and whomever else is out there. Quentin Post, you saw in that first game in the first quarter, he didn't do it for a long time, but he's going to open things up for a lot of guys. And then like tonight, it's not like I don't have Jimmy's numbers right in front, 4 for 12 from the field. If Jimmy's off on a certain night, he can score 20 because he's going to get to the line, which gives you as an older team an opportunity to gather yourself, to get the other team in foul trouble, to be physical. And it's like running the ball in football, tire out the other team because they actually have to play defense with Jimmy Butler around because you're not just jacking a 30-footer with 22 left on the shot clock. So yeah, right now everything's fine. The only thing that does make me nervous is everybody's in that, new job kind of a thing, and everybody's really happy and everybody loves the chemistry. When they inevitably go through something, is Draymond Green going to say something to Jimmy that Jimmy doesn't like and all that kind of stuff? That's going to be the thing, because Jimmy's kind of like Durant in that he doesn't need the ball and he's not going to complain about the ball. And everybody knows that it goes through Steph, and Jimmy will get his share of clutch, touches and opportunities and those kind of things. And the number one thing, you hit it right on the head. Jimmy got paid. If Jimmy didn't get paid, he wouldn't be here. And I know that for a fact because I had heard from a really good source that when Jimmy said he wasn't going to come here, Jimmy had no problem coming here. The first thing was, hey, Jimmy, we got a deal in place. Would you come here? Do you have an extension for me? No, not interested. The Suns actually had an extension for him, but they couldn't work out a trade because Bradley Beal has one of only 2 no trade clauses, LeBron being the other. And so Bradley Beal went, nah, I'm good. So it completely stalled that out. So they had an extension for Jimmy, no deal. The Warriors had a deal, no extension. And the minute they said, how about $120 million? All of a sudden, Jimmy became Giddy Jimmy again. You see that press conference? He's like, oh, I just can't wait to play basketball. And oh, this is so great. And it's like, well, how come 2 days ago you didn't want to come here?
You know what I loved? The question was, it was his first press conference, and I was on KMBR when it started. So I'm like watching it, and since I'm on, I'm actually kind of taking notes, right? Because I want to have a few things to say when the presser's over. And the question came up in the middle of the presser, John. Well, Jimmy, if you loved Miami so much, why did you want to leave? And he knows he doesn't want to talk about money because he's a smart enough guy. He knows he's making ridiculous money, and so the last thing he wants to talk about is money. So he's like, that's a good question. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really know. And it was basically just like, I wanted Miami to give me $55 million over 2 years, or a 2-year deal for $55 million a year. They balked at that. And so I basically made it hell on earth for them. They had to suspend me 3 times because I was such a unhappy person, and I made things so uncomfortable for them that they wanted to trade me. And the Warriors were, if they didn't pay me, I'd be just as unhappy here. But they decided to pay me a 2-year deal for $112 million or whatever, and thus, But that was a great one. Why were you unhappy in Miami? I really don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
It's so obvious. You live on South Beach. There's no state income tax. It's a good organization. Like, what else could you want? But where Pat Riley made a mistake in Miami is they said in the offseason, we're not giving Jimmy an extension.
Right. Don't draw the line in the sand.
Just say, hey, we'll see what happens at the end of the year. They flat out said, nah, we're not.
Yeah.
Because
Riley wants to be the big dog. Because Riley's used to being the big dog.
So I was like, what are you doing? You're both a couple of alphas, and you just disrespected the guy. And that's the only issue I have is, look, Jimmy's going to fit. I don't care how old he is. He's going to play hard. He's going to be playoff Jimmy at some point. All these things are fine. Steph is 100% correct. Steph's got the outside. Jimmy's got the inside. They're going to actually start going to the free throw line again, all these kind of things. But when it comes down to it, and this shouldn't matter, but it does, Krug, you know it as well as anybody, the whole chemistry thing, the whole reason Durant didn't want to come back had nothing to do with basketball. Durant didn't want to come back because he didn't want to be perceived again as this is not his team. This is not his city. It's always going to be Steph's team, always going to be Steph's city. He hated that, felt disrespected by it. He would rather not win a championship on his team, on his fading timeline, where people would think it's all about Durant, than he would come over here and win a championship, which is the dumbest thing. Nobody's going to remember all that crap. All anyone is going to remember, they're not going to remember what you made, how much. They're not going to remember what the team chemistry was like. None of that. How many rings did you win, Kevin, when you get to that level of where you are? That's all that people care about. So Jimmy Butler got paid. He's fine with it. But is there going to be some sort of a chemistry issue when push comes to shove, they lose a few games, Draymond's going to tell him what to do, Jimmy's not going to like it. It's not perceived because, look, Miami was Jimmy's town and team. I mean, football's the thing in Miami. But as far as basketball is concerned, that wasn't Bam Adebayo's team. That was Jimmy's team. And he took all the key shots and he got all the accolades and he got him to the finals from a play-in. Like, is that going to matter to Jimmy in the long run or not? Is he cool with being the Robin to Steph's Batman? Is he cool not having the whole spotlight to him? Is he cool that it's always going to be Steph and Draymond's team because they were here first? Is that all cool to Jimmy? Right now it is because he's in, they're in the honeymoon phase. But when they lose a few games, if they lose a key game, if Draymond comes over to him like he did Durant in that Clippers game, which really started the end, the crumbling started when he ripped Durant right in front of everybody. I'm telling you this, if he goes after Butler like he did Durant, it's going to go right there. Like they're going to go.
But all I'll say is that I never cared about Draymond calling out Durant. Why? Because Durant is a wuss. Durant was trying to, tuck tail and get out of there, and Draymond knew he was leaving, and he called him out on it. That's I had no problem with that. I really didn't. I
didn't either. I'm not a Durant guy.
Durant's battling with 11-year-olds on Twitter.
Well, what's weird about Durant though and he said it again today in Phoenix. I just laughed when I heard the press conference. He's always talking about, I just want it to be about ball. I just want it to be about ball. With Kevin Durant, as great as he is, it should be just about ball and nothing else should matter, but everything does matter to him. You know,
well, he was done wrong. I will say this. I mean, Bob Myers said it the other day, and he was right. He said, hey, you know what? KD was the only one who actually got blamed for coming here. I didn't get blamed as the GM for getting him. Steph didn't get blamed as the guy who needed him. Nobody got blamed except for KD, and I don't know why. I don't know why the NBA media and the NBA fan was so pushed out of shape. It's like he wasn't the first guy to join a good team, and he wasn't going to be the last guy. And people acted like the Warriors team was like this total, like, you know, team that was bought and paid for by, you know, just a total free agency team. I mean, to me, the 94 Niners title is way more bought and paid for than the KD Warriors titles. But you know what? How many Niner fans walk around and go, well, you know what? We got 4 plus that 1. No, we got 5. Nobody says we got 4 plus that 1. Because
that's what I'm saying. Is that's I guess that's why I don't understand.
You know,
I don't understand
nobody discredits that 5th one at all.
But
yet,
Durant,
that was bought and paid for. Carmen Policy signed all those guys. Dion, you know, Plummer, Norton, Richard Dent, Ricky Jackson, Tim Harris. I mean, come on down. All come aboard. I mean, it was an awesome freaking team, and the Niners deserved it because they had treated their players so well. But that team was the dawn of free agency, and it was a bought and paid for type team. It wasn't the same
nobody talks
as the other teams.
What these guys don't understand in the middle of it, they will later on in their career. But all this stuff, and only social media has only heightened it with these guys because it gets so in their head, even though they say it doesn't. But like you said, Kevin Durant battling with an egghead avatar that has 4 followers. You know, it's like, bro, come on, man.
Right.
You should be so far above that. But no one's going to remember. So he felt like, well, I got to go to Brooklyn with my own team. And that fell apart with a couple of knuckleheads like Harden.
You'd rather
Kyrie.
play with Kyrie Irving than Steph Curry?
And then he thinks that he's going to do that with guys like Bradley Beal, Bradley Beal was going downhill, dude, untradeable contract. And like, he craves so badly to want to be on his team and to get credit for his team and his championship, his timeline. Dude, if you wanted that, Oklahoma City was your team. It wasn't Westbrook's team. It wasn't Harden's team. It wasn't Serge Ibaka's team. It was your team. And if you just had stayed there, then you would have had all of it. And then after you went to the Warriors, 2 MVPs, 2 finals MVPs, he probably gets a 3rd if he doesn't get hurt against Toronto. If you stay here and you win 5 championships, the only people talking about that you joined the Warriors in the way that you did are the ESPN dumb talking head shows, and no one cares. In the annals of history, it's going to be Kevin Durant had 5 rings. It's never going to say in parentheses in small print, but it was really Steph's team in Steph's town. Like, it's not going to say that. You won 5, period.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He's so worried about everything outside of ball, but then every time the media gets to him, he goes, I just want a ball. No, you don't. You want to fight nobodies on Twitter, and you want to rip the media here, and you want to. And, you know, and like I said, he was asked point blank in a press conference today about Ramona Shelburne's report not wanting to come. He wouldn't address any of it because he knows damn well that he didn't want to come back here because he didn't want the perception to be that he had to run back to Warriors to try to win a championship. And who cares? Seriously, outside of like a Barkley or a Screaming A or something like who cares? Nobody cares about that, dude.
I know. So seriously. And it's hilarious that he can't handle it. All right, let's hit the supers and then we'll bolt for the door. NBA Elias says 12 Philadelphia Super Bowl starters were drafted in the last 4 years. Wow.
Well, and that's not only to say that again, AJ Brown in 2022 and Zach Bond off the trash heap and Saquon Barkley because the Giants are so stupid. I mean, sometimes you're really, really smart, and a lot of the times too, other teams around the league are just really, really dumb. Like, how did Saquon Barkley get to the Eagles? What are you kidding? Like, seriously, it's ridiculous, man.
That whole not inside the NFL, the whole Hard Knocks thing.
Yeah, that killed. That makes the Giants look so dumb.
Wellington Mara. You know you got cash when your name's Wellington.
Who is the center?
Has there ever been a poor Wellington?
No, never. Who was the guy? Weston Richburg. Remember that when the Niners signed Weston
Weston
Richburg the third. I
third.
knew he was going to be a terrible center. No,
Yes,
no center
Davis,
named
like Davis
Weston
Love the
Richburg.
third. You think Davis Love the third ever missed a meal? Probably never.
No, he never did.
I'm Davis Love the third.
And I'm a golfer.
Like, reminds me of Trading Places.
Exactly.
I'm Lewis Winthorpe the third. Louis.
I don't want my center being named Weston Richburg the third. It's like he was always hurt, that dude. Yeah, you're hurt.
Claudaddy Arcades in the house. What's up, Claudaddy? He says, the nightcap with Krueg and Lund. Love listening to you guys. Two gents of sound mind talking Bay Area sports from your mouth to God's or GM's ears.
First of all, I love
Claudaddy.
him. I love him I love him deeply, but it says two gents. Not really. Of sound mind, not so much. But yeah, everything else is right.
Claudaddy is sponsoring our trip to spring training, and he's got his own arcades. Claudaddy Arcades. This is a man who runs his own arcades.
Seriously?
And we're going to be telling you about his arcades during the month of March because he's sponsoring our trip to spring training.
Arcades were the best growing up.
And we're going to head down to Arizona and do some golfing, maybe watch some Cactus League, say a prayer that the Giants sign somebody worth watching. It's going to be a good few days.
Have you seen everybody going crazy on social media? All the Giants and everybody around the Giants going, baseball season is here. Baseball season is here. It's like, well, enjoy it because this is going to be the best part for the Giants. The whole speculation part, because once the games start, wah, wah, wah. Like this is going to be the best part of the year.
The Giants media are the Giants' biggest fans.
I've never heard a term like that, but yeah,
the people who cover the Giants in the media are their biggest fans. Their biggest fans.
They get mad at you.
And they will fight you.
They will fight
not
you.
Well or anything. But they will fight you if you try to criticize their Giants. How dare you? How dare you question?
I know a couple that you're speaking of without
it's pathetic. Seriously pathetic.
I mean, I'm gonna go down there because, you know, like you said, it's great content. I love spring.
George is there, right?
Yeah, George lives there, so you know, it's gonna be really cool. I'm excited to, you know, and I love baseball, man. To me, there's nothing better than sitting in the yard and having a beer and having a dog and hanging out, and it's a sunny day and you're in the city. There's just nothing better. Opening day, I love every bit of it. But then the NL West
love spring
starts.
training. I love spring training.
Too.
I don't love like. You know, have you been?
You don't love the
by the way,
season.
No, I don't. No, because the season, then the Dodgers are 27 games up,
exactly.
And you know, we're mathematically eliminated on the 4th of July, and yeah, no, I
saw a meme today.
But I love cactus. I love cactus. I'm the king of cactus.
Oh, I got to tell you, like in 2016, I took George to 10 games in 5 days. So we went to spring training in Arizona, and we went to a day game, night game, day game, night game. We did it all the whole time. And the Giants were so nice to us. Buster Posey, he was this floppy-headed 12-year-old kid. And we're in the, you know, we had passes, and I'm just kind of standing there looking around. And Buster Posey, of course, looks right by me and gives me a dirty look, grabs my son by the hand. At the time, he's 12. He goes, who do you want to meet? And Buster walks him to Crawford, to Belt, it was the coolest thing. I'm standing there. Buster's
cool.
You know, and it's not time to start ripping Buster, man. This is, by the way, double agent Farhan, who just went to the Dodgers today. I knew it. He's a double agent. The Dodgers gave him the 1 year in 21, and then what he did was he ruined the franchise for the next 10 years. And they're bringing him back with champagne today. Good job, Farhan. Good job. Like, you know, double agent Farhan goes back to the Dodgers. But you're right. Spring training is so cool. Players are laid back. Like, if anybody's watching, that's like, should I go down? Should I take my kid? Everybody's laid back. They come out of the game after 3 innings. They're signing autographs for kids. You never get that in the regular season. You know, the prices are getting up there now, so it's not cheap like it used to be. But going to Scottsdale Stadium and then going all around all the stadiums, doing like day-night doubleheaders and stuff like that with your kid or something, nothing better.
To me, my favorite place in Arizona right now is this Salt River Fields in Talking Stick or whatever the hell it is. The outfield berm is just massive. And you just get a couple tall boys and you sit out there on the grass and you sit there and watch some spring training ball. I'm going to do that. We'll play a round of golf on Monday.
Plus, it's
really
not too hot
excited.
now, so you can go out and golf
Oh,
in the middle of the day.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be
Man,
awesome. I'm
it
super
is.
fired up.
I got locked into Scottsdale Stadium one time. I was doing the PM drive show with Tom,
Mhm.
and the Giants were on the road, right? So all of our equipment was back at Scottsdale Stadium. So I watched about half the game, and I ripped back to Scottsdale Stadium. I do the show with Tom, and they didn't know I was in there apparently. And so we go 3 to 7. I'm supposed to meet my mom for dinner, like across the street. So I go to all the gates; they're all locked, and I'm trying to call security, and nobody. And I don't know how to get out of the stadium. I'm walking in there, so I had to throw my bag. Like I got a garbage can, put it up against one of those fences, but it's like a wrought iron fence, and it's got like the points on the top.
Right.
So I throw my bag over, which has got my computer and everything, and then I try to jump over the thing after about an hour of trying to get out of the stadium. I catch a really nice shirt on the fence. It rips all the way down, and I have to meet my mom at like the steakhouse, this really nice place. And then the next day, because I was making jokes on the air about it, how about anybody could steal the beer in there, and it's I could just jump over, jump back, and security was pissed. So the next day, they come to me and they go, "We really would appreciate it if you didn't on the air talk about how you could steal all the beer out of Scottsdale Stadium." And I go, "Well, I would really appreciate it if you would tell me how to get out of the freaking stadium." And apparently, there was like a red. They acted like I should know that out in like dead center field. There's a button. You have to there's a panel, and you have to go all the way out to center field. And there's like a panel that you push a button and a door opens. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to know that? You guys locked me in here. So anyway,
That's amazing.
I got locked in Scottsdale Stadium one year.
One of the best days I ever had was in Ho-Ho-Cam Park.
The old Cubs, but now the A's place. Yeah.
Right. It used to be the Cubs Park, right? So I'm there with Chris Townsend. Okay. And Townie's kind of a partier. And it was a Sunday, and we're doing the pregame show, and then we're going to we got like a 4:00 flight out of Sky Harbor right there, right, back to the Bay Area. So the game's going on. So Townie and I we do our pregame show. It's like 9 or it's probably 10:00 in the morning. So now it's like 11:00 in the morning, and we're in Ho-Ho-Cam, and they have a looks like a lunchroom, but it says, I'll never forget this. It says, "Welcome to the Ho's Lair." I'm not joking.
No
Welcome
way.
to the Ho's Lair.
No, I mean, did they do it on purpose, or they were oblivious, or what?
Get this. At Ho-Ho-Cam, they called the ushers and usherettes hoes.
No, they did not.
Yes, they did.
Oh, that's
what they were called.
How many years ago was that? Because nowadays that's a lawsuit. I mean, there's no doubt it's a lawsuit.
It was,
you're calling me a hoe?
It was like 20 years ago. It's like 20 years ago.
Had to be 20 years ago.
It was like in the 90s, right?
What exactly is my position? What would they call my job? Oh, you're a hoe.
You're the hoe. You're one of the hoes. You're one of the hoes.
You're one of the hoes.
Okay, so we go into the Ho's Lair, and we take it, and it's a bunch of old blue hair people,
right.
Sitting around eating lunch. And so we walk in, and Townie goes, let's go. And he turned around, and I go, and I pointed to, I saw an open tap. An open tap. I pointed to the tap.
No
and I'm
way.
like, Townie, look. And he's like, no shit. Look at that.
That's totally him too.
Okay. So we sit down, we walk over to the tap, and the woman's like, "Welcome to the Ho's Lair," and this and that. We're with the Giants broadcast team and this and that. And she's like, "Well, you're more than welcome to have lunch here." And then Townsend's like, "What about this? And the beer?" And she's like, "Yes, have as many as you like."
No way.
Yeah. So now they take our order. We order like a burger or something. And he's like, "Dude, we just found an open tap that's free." So the two of us just start pounding drinks. We're drinking beer all day. We never left the Ho's Lair, didn't go to the baseball game, and missed our flight back to San Francisco.
All because of the Ho's Lair.
We had to reschedule the flight. I had to tell Agnew. He's like, "Hey, Krueger, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
What the hell? What the hell's going on here? How come you and Townsend missed your flight?" And I go, "Well, Bob, we were having beers at the Ho's Lair." And he's like, "What?
Dude, that story in and of itself, and you told that on the air, right?
Oh,
Numerous
yeah.
times.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's an
that
amazing
story
story.
alone, like Bob was the program director at KBR. I mean, that story alone is worth the extra money that they paid for the flight. I mean, that's amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. The
when you walked in
hose
there, he was
lair.
like, the hose lair, and you're a hoe, like, and you're cool with that.
The hose lair.
Oh my God. That's great.
All right, that's going to
What
do
a
it for us. Oh
story.
wait, we got a couple more things here. We got
The hose
this
lair.
one from James Foster. He says Aeneas Peebles. That's right, Aeneas Peebles
You're
is the
big on him, I
Vatek.
know.
Oh yeah, he's this guy's 6 feet 290.
Who likes the
Aeneas
fire hydrant
Peebles.
types? You like
I
these
love that.
guys.
I do because height is one of the most overrated things in pro football. Did it hurt Sam Mills that he was 5'9"? No. Did it hurt Dexter Coakley that he was 5'9"? No.
Oh, he was good.
If you're super fast and athletic, it doesn't matter if you're tall. I mean, does it matter that some of these running backs, maybe the greatest running back of all time was 5'7"? Barry Sanders is a tiny little guy. Tiny. He's probably the best running back I've ever lived. I mean, it's just height is the athleticism is so important now that the height really doesn't matter. James Foster says breaking 49ers have way more holes than we realize. Defensive tackle, edge, free safety, linebacker, wide receiver, tight end too. Yeah, there's no question, James. They have a lot more needs than I think most people think. All right, that is going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krueg Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Thanks to Better for sponsoring this live stream. Johnny, what do you got cooking the rest of the week? I know, and everybody, if you're over here, we got, almost 2,400 people watching this right now. If you're over here and you've yet to hit like and subscribe over at John's channel, Johnny, tell them it's basically John Lund Unleashed.
John Lund Unleashed. It's on YouTube, and like you, we go live all the time, 8 in the morning, 8 to 10 Pacific is normally, but we do all sorts of stories of the day. Best thing to do is just go to johnlundunleashed.com. I have blogs there, all the archives of all the shows. So make sure you check it out. But yeah, I'm on YouTube just like you, John Lund Unleashed. Thanks, Krueg. I appreciate it, man.
We got this one from Todd Case. He's like, super chatted Krueg $200 and $100 once.
What are you drinking?
He's like, wait. What night says he gave up on me? Gave up on Krueger after a decade loving him on KMBR, and a Dodger fan got on and Krueger backed him.
I must
have been really bitter.
I know is that when you were coaching my kid when he was a 9-year-old on which is wore Dodgers hats and you wouldn't. I remember that. They're like, here, Krueg, this is the team. They're the Dodgers. You unfortunately got stuck with the Dodgers. You would not put that hat on. Because I was waiting too, because I'm like, I'm going to take a picture and I'm going to blackmail him. You never did. You never put the Dodger hat on.
That Dodger team, we went like 18-2. I mean, it was an amazing team, and it was a team where we had a bunch of guys who could run, and I just said, "Hey, look." I remember telling the kids, I said, "Hey, look."
So much so that everybody got mad at you.
Yes, I almost got in a fight with a third base coach on another team who was like,
running guys.
I'm like, dude, we're going to steal. He goes, well, when are you going to stop stealing? I go, when the game's over. Exactly. When the game's over, then we'll stop stealing. But we stole, and I told my guys, I'm like, tie your shoes tight and look for the sign, because you know what happened was I got tired of coaching Little League where everybody got to first base and they acted like they had won. And I'm like, look, you don't win until you score. So don't be happy when you're on first base. Be happy when you score. So everybody, we're going to steal bases. We're taking extra bases. I'll never get mad if you guys get thrown out, but we're going to run, and we're going to run a lot. So, and I remember I had some kind of heavy set kids on the team, and they were like, didn't want to run at first, and then their parents by the end of the year like, you made Jimmy run more this year than his last 3 coaches have ever made Jimmy run. I'm like, well, you know what?
Quit eating quarter pounders and let's go.
Yeah, Jimmy needs to run, but you know what? So do I. So Jimmy and I can run together. So there you go.
All right, man.
All right, that does it. What is Todd K's got another one here? Let me see. Todd K.
He's giving you $100 a shot. What's he doing? Drinking?
He has given me $100 before. He said, Todd K, when Larry started with the other two, he said, true story. The other two being Dan Coach Emilio and Ryan Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And then he says, oh, God. And everyone says, oh, on God, I did. And a Dodger fan came in and he
Oh, you're
backed
saying
him.
you backed the Dodgers fan when they called?
He's saying I backed the Dodger fan.
Yeah,
Haha, wow. Todd K, wow. Did I really back a Dodger fan over you?
I'm not sure that you did, only because I just know that
Todd K says my only super chats to Lund is going to be my $200 and $100 super chats.
That's beautiful.
Those
are beautiful. Yeah.
Seriously, nothing will make you feel better about your decision to come over to YouTube than a $200 super chat.
I know. I feel like I'm a dancer and I got to do something. You know, I got to do something really big. It's like, oh my gosh, like now we got to go in the back room and I really got to shake it. You know, it's like
last night we got almost 90 supers because we told people I was going to slam a beer, and then I did. Then we at 50 supers, and then we got to 80, and I slammed a second beer. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I may just do this regularly. Why? Because I kind of like slamming beers, and I also
paying you
like
to slam beers. I popped in because you had sent me the link, and I was doing a bunch of stuff, and I saw that you already had 4 in there, so I was like, I don't want to overload these guys. And it was the most brilliant thing ever. And I'm watching, and I'm seeing this thing, and you said if we get to 50 of them, right? And I'm sitting around, so I had to watch. I was like, oh, they're at 46. Can they do it? And you kept going, can we do it? I'm like, they're gonna pay him to drink beer. I'm like, this is the greatest job. I thought I had the greatest job. That's the greatest job. Like all of a sudden they got to 50 and you chugged that Heineken. And I was like,
yeah,
you got to be kidding me, man. They're paying him to chug beer.
I mean, this is why I love me some YouTube.
It was incredible.
Todd Cases, and how many other people gave you a $200 super chat? MF, I think, might have given me a $500 super chat once. Or I think
you got to do something.
Maybe
big
it was
for
$250. Maybe it was Todd K that gave me the $250. Maybe it was
somebody gives you $500. You got to go to lunch. You got to super serve them, man. You got to do something. I don't mean in a weird way. I'm just saying.
It is a lot of fun, though. I mean, as you can tell, the YouTube thing is a lot of fun. Anyway, hey, that's going to do it for us. We're 2 hours and 15 minutes in.
Believe me, if we get triggered, we'll go left and right. So yeah, you got to end this thing. Man.
Seriously, I can't. You know, it's. Could you imagine if we just if this was like radio and you just went as long as you wanted?
Oh my God, we'd have. Oh my God, Mike Holder was running our show, and he would get so mad sometimes. And it wasn't even me. It wasn't even me. It's like Greg Papa. I don't know how he does it. He has the lung capacity of like a fish or something. Like he could talk for 35 straight minutes and not even take a breath. And then I'd go to break, and a program director would come walking down the hall and go, "Why didn't you break on time?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I said 3 words that whole 35-minute segment, like when you were with Gary." It's like we just did a 25-minute segment. I said 3 words, and I tried to break in like 18 times. Go talk to him. And the program director's like, "I'm afraid of him. I'm afraid of Gary. I'm afraid of Greg." You talk to him, man. I try to break in, jackass. Wouldn't you love that? How come you guys didn't break on time? Because you hired a guy that doesn't have to take a breath for 35 minutes, man.
That's the magic, too. Like, you know what? If you had just broken on time, this would have been the number one show in America.
Yeah, that's what I knew.
You don't realize how good this show would have been if you just took a break every now and then.
I know. That's what I always knew that I had a bad program director when he would just say, just break on time. I'm like, yeah, like all the other great talk show hosts in the country, they get massive ratings like Stern and every. Those guys don't break for 2 hours, but okay, I'll break. That's all the advice I have. Hey, you got any advice on the show? Any content? No, just break on time. Thanks, genius. Appreciate it.
Todd K, skills gonna need you here on out. Todd K, 200 Krueger. Then he says, and you said we need drama for the Dodger fan. You sell out.
Wow.
Come on.
All right, I won't keep you
bro.
going. I won't keep you going. You had us broke almost like twice, and then I broke in again, so I'm done.
Anyway, hey, thanks to everybody. Have a great night. Thanks for supporting the Krueg Show. If you've yet to hit like and subscribe, go over and give John Lund Unleashed a like and subscribe. He's trying to build up his channel. Help him do so. He puts out great content. He's fantastic. Have a great night, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly